Part 9. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 81. Chapter 10. A group of people followed the head of the Jing family to the Jing family. The disciples of the True Fire sect were left to rest in the front hall, while Ji Chang's, Jing Nianzi and the head of the Jing family went to the backyard. Miss Jing's boudoir. Ji Chang's couldn't see it, but he could smell the plum blossoms in the air. The head of the Jing family was still leading the way. As he was walking, he suddenly heard the footsteps behind him stop. He turned around and saw the blindfolded Dr. Xiu standing there, facing Merlin's direction. Jing Nianzi also stopped with a strange expression on his face. "Master, what's wrong?" Ji Chang still faced that way and said softly, "She is there." The expressions of Jing Nianzi and Jing family master were suddenly stunned. Jing Nianzi is okay. Although she also wants to see her mother, she has not seen her since she was a child. She can be angry for her mother or avenge her. She will naturally not have much emotional direction if she has not cultivated it. Patriarch Jing's blood boiled all of a sudden by these words. When I got excited, my hands couldn't help but tremble. He just trembled with his hands, looking towards the place where there was only a plum forest for him, and his voice floated with excitement, "Ruer? Is she here?" Ji Chang stepped forward and slowly entered the Milin. It was dark in front of him, but this did not prevent him from reaching out his hand and taking down the sleeping woman who was lying on the trunk of a plum blossom tree. She must have loved plum blossoms very much during her lifetime, or she may have often wandered around this plum forest. Everything here made her feel familiar and at ease. Therefore, after she passed away due to dystocia, when her soul still had a little bit of consciousness, she came here in a daze. I found my most peaceful place to sleep. In essence, this world is dominated by the jungle, just like the mortals who have entered the Azura path will probably be torn to pieces by evil spirits or become the lowest and most despicable and brainless remnants of the Azura path. Maternal women who are between life and death can only stay in the human world after death because they are rejected by the Shuratao. But after all, they are souls and not people. They can only stay here in a deep sleep. Each world has its own unique laws. Ji Chang's guessed that perhaps it is precisely because there are too many people and too many lives in this world that Shuratao has acquiesced in the devouring and squeezing of souls. After all, its own duty is to create new souls, not to accommodate souls. Miss Jing's family was weightless and easy to guide. Perhaps she was subconsciously familiar with holding his hand, and she was brought to the head of the Jing family by Ji Chang's while she was sleeping. Facing the head of the Jing family, who couldn't hold back a word for a long time because of his excitement, Ji Chang said, "We need a place where no one goes often." Master Jing took them to Miss Jing's boudoir. Since her death, he ordered the place to be sealed. There are still bronze mirrors and combs on the table, and the jewelry box is closed. Everything was covered with thick dust. After all, no one had set foot in this room for 14 years. Patriarch Jing's brain was so hot that he temporarily forgot his hatred for Ji Chang's. When he knew that his daughter was still there, he said with some guilt, "If I had known that Ruer was here, I would never have sealed this place. I will come here every day to accompany her. She likes to go to the theater, so I will let the theater troupe come here to sing." As he spoke, his eyesight began to darken again, and his body swayed, but Ji Chang's held him steady with one hand. Head Jing looked back at him subconsciously. According to the disciples of the True Fire sect, his son-in-law has lost his spiritual power and lived like a mortal for more than 10 years, but his good looks have not aged after more than 10 years as a mortal. It is true that she has grown up and matured a bit compared to back then, but there is no trace of aging on her fair face. She is still the same as before. Even if she doesn't show anything else, she can still have such a good appearance that does not belong to this world. To make everyone believe that he is the immortal master. Patriarch Jing seemed to have just noticed the white cloth covering Ji Chang's size. In other words, he is willing to let his hatred take a nap from now on. What happened to your eyes? Thinking about what the disciples of the true fire sect said just now, could it be that they were left behind during the sex change? Accidentally hurt. Ji Chang's brief words were enough to cover up the matter of his eyes. Jing Nianzi took the initiative to make it clear, "Grandpa, his eyes are like this to save me." After she finished speaking, she looked at Ji Chang's with complicated eyes. How could there be such a person? Saved people, but didn't take credit. Nagasawa was so smart, he should have known that if he told her that he was blinded to save her at this time, Grandpa would definitely be moved. But he said nothing. It seemed that he had taken off all the protection on his body and stood there waiting for his grandfather to be judged. Jing Nianzi didn't understand why he did this. She could only rely on her own understanding. Is it because he feels guilty? Because of guilt, he allowed his grandfather to misunderstand him and condemn him. But those things were not his fault in the first place. Jing Nianzi put herself in his shoes and thought that if it had been her, she would never have done better than Nagasawa. Not to mention anything else, I just controlled my emotions and ran away thousands of miles when the sect was destroyed, and then spent more than 10 years cultivating my spiritual power day by day before dispersing. She would definitely not be able to stand it. But Nagasawa did it. He endured for more than 10 years and became immortal for more than 10 years. Then he personally killed King Nai, destroyed the demon cultivator who participated in the annihilation of the sect, and avenged the sect and himself. And he still managed to save his life under such circumstances, and came to help the deceased madam. It was also her mother who came to the Azura path. No matter from what aspect, Nagasawa is a person whom I admire greatly. But now, this elder whom she admires infinitely turns out to be her biological father. The resentment and hatred towards his father in the past collided with the admiration and reverence for Nagasawa, which made Jing Nian think about everything. She didn't know what to do, so she could only try her best to excuse Ji Chang's in front of her grandfather. After Jing Nianzi said this, the head of the Jing family did not doubt that his granddaughter would lie to him. He glanced at Ji Chang's with complicated eyes and skipped the topic. "You said before that you could let Ruer meet with us." "Yes." Ji Chang's explained, "I will wake her up before going to Shura Road. There is not much popularity here, which is very beneficial to her." Patriarch Jing took a deep breath and asked, "How long?" "Half a stick of incense. The people of Changle City are cleaning up the dead demon cultivators outside. Their mentality was quite good. After all, although they were frightened, the demon cultivators were already dead before they could even knock on the door. What they have to do now is to carry these dead demon cultivators to a unified place for burning. After all, the body structure of demon cultivators is the same as that of mortals. If they are left alone, the stench of decay will definitely fill the sky after a few days." While carrying the body, they started chatting. "I heard that the monk who came back to Miss Sun from the Jing family is her father. Is it true? My fifth aunt's brother's neighbor was on the tower just now. He heard clearly that the monk was the liar who left Miss Jing's family behind and never came back. He is not a mortal, he is really a monk, so he shouldn't be a liar, right? I have never seen such a powerful monk. The Jing family can be said to be able to see the moonlight when the clouds clear, and it is said that Miss Sun of the Jing family is also a monk. It's really a great incense." As soon as the man finished saying this, he saw the person opposite him suddenly looking towards the sky behind him in shock. "What's wrong with you?" "Smells, smells." After listening to the words of the person opposite, he turned around and was completely stunned by the scene behind him. I saw more and more green smoke pouring out of the high sky in the distance. After they came out, they did not scatter or rise into the sky, but gathered in the same place, gradually forming the shape of a gate. This gate looks very ferocious, and the words that the demon cultivators used to describe Ji Chang's can be used on it. Green face, fangs, 3 heads and 6 arms. It is alive. It was getting bigger and bigger with more and more green smoke, and a pair of eyes on the door opened, looking at the people below with violence. The people of Changle City had never seen this formation before, and they immediately retreated in fright. Monster, monster. This direction seems to be towards the Jing family. Could it be that those immortal masters are doing this? Some people were so frightened that they fled the city, while others stood there and observed carefully, judging that the gate was not lethal and that the whole body was composed of green smoke. In the front hall of the Jing family, the disciples of the True Fire sect who were drinking tea and chatting heard the fearful shouts of the servants outside, and they all grabbed their swords and went out. When he looked up and saw the huge door, his eyes showed shock. Shuradeo. It's really Shuradeo. Master Nagasawa actually summoned Shuradeo. As for what Shuradeo looks like, the most detailed description in the eastern continent is its gate. After all, no matter what happened to the monks when they were about to die, as long as they could come back, none of them would have entered the gate of Shuradeo. All they see is this scary gate. Because they still have the aura of the living in their bodies, they are not allowed to enter. They can only linger outside, waiting for their bodies to die completely or for the dead inside to come out and tell them about the Azura path. The disciples of the True Fire sect know this, but they have only heard about it and seen the pictures in the book drawn by the monks from memory. This was the first time I really saw Shuradeo. The door of Shura Road is getting bigger and bigger, and the giant beast on the door roars with dissatisfaction, roaring at the mortals and monks below, obviously unhappy that he was called here even though he was sleeping soundly. Even though the disciples of the True Fire sect were fearless because of their youth, they could not help but show timidity on their faces when they saw it roaring, and they quietly hid back. When they think about entering this place when their lifespan is over, there is an inexplicable panic in their hearts. Brother, what should we do now? Are we going to find the real person? Don't go yet. The real person said before on the road that he would summon the Shuradeo to send his wife away. What if we go over now and disturb him? The oldest disciple simply sat cross-legged on the spot, assuming a posture of practicing the exercises. How many people will never see Shuradeo once in their lives? We are lucky to have such a destiny. Why not comprehend it on the spot and see if we can improve our cultivation further? The remaining disciples also sat down cross-legged obediently and began to fall into practice. The servants in the Jing family's house who were so frightened by the appearance of Shuradeo saw the actions of these little immortal masters. Although I didn't know what they were doing, I felt relieved all of a sudden. They didn't want to run away or hide in the house. They stood quietly on the porch, craning their necks to see what the little immortals were doing. What they didn't know was that with Changle City as the center point, monks from all directions saw the Shura path above Changle City. Whether they knew it was the Shura path or not, they all rushed towards it. Being able to face such a Shura sect with the aura of the dead is a great blessing for a monk. On the way here, they were filled with doubts. Who on earth could have summoned such a behemoth into the world by just burning incense and lighting a cigarette? Ji Changs, who had done all this, used his hand as a container, reached out and picked a trace of death energy from the Shura path, and sprinkled it on Miss Jing's family. When a person dies, she is dead, and mortals cannot see her soul at all. But in Shuradeo, all ghosts are embodied. So Ji Chang simply and rudely called Shuradeo directly. You can't see it in the mortal world. If you call the Shuradeo over and create an illusion that you have already entered the Shuradeo, you can always see it. The death energy of Shuradeo fell on the other party, and she slowly opened her eyes that had been closed since her death. When Jingxingru opened his eyes, he didn't realize that he was dead. Her memory was still about lying on the bed giving birth, and then hearing the child's cry. Did you faint? She didn't know whether the baby was a boy or a girl, so the baby must have been placed next to her. These thoughts immediately disappeared when I saw my father in front of me, who was crying with excitement. Jingxingru opened his mouth, Dad, Why are you old? Mr. Jing's eyes were full of tears. Looking at the daughter in front of him who still looked the same as she was more than 10 years ago, with a lively expression, he stretched out his trembling hands and opened his mouth. After a while, he squeezed out the sound from his throat, Are you son? Dad misses you. Daddy misses you so much. I really miss you. Before Jing Xingru could react, he rushed forward, hugged his daughter and cried bitterly. Jing Xingru didn't know what happened, but it didn't stop her from feeling the grief from her father. She didn't even have time to see who was around, and she subconsciously reached out and patted her father on the back. Dad, what's going on? What happened? Don't panic. I'm here. If anything happens, we can handle it together. As she was patting, she suddenly saw Ji Chang standing there from the corner of her eye. Jing Xingru's expression was stunned. She stared blankly at her husband, who was still as tall as she remembered, with an air of immortality. He is back. Her mind went blank except for one sentence. Her husband is back. Tears fell from his eyes and fell all over his face, but there was a happy smile on Jing Xingru's face. She said to Ji Chang's, I know you will come back. Ji Chang's was silent for a few seconds. Then he stepped forward and held Jing Xingru's hand, and said in a soft voice what Jing Xingru had been waiting for a long time, I'm back. Jing Xingru held his old father who was still crying and looked at Ji Chang's in front of him. What's wrong with your eyes? Why are you covered with a cloth? And you seem to be. When she said this, she suddenly realized something. At this moment, Jing Xingru's expression was confused. The confused ones felt a little distressed. She looked at Ji Chang's, and then at her father, who was already full of white hair and much older than she remembered, and her eyes slowly fell on the face of Jing Niansi, who was also crying. Jing Niansi looks a lot like her. If you compare Ji Chang's, who is still wearing a white cloth, and look carefully for a long time, you may be able to see that their appearance is somewhat similar. But if it were Jing Xingru, he wouldn't have to look at her for a long time. Just one look at a random stranger would be sure that Jing Xingru and Jing Niansi are related by blood. It is precisely because of this that Jing Xingru was even more stunned. She looked carefully at the little girl who was silently wiping her tears, and then at her husband and father who were no longer as young as before. He lowered his head again and looked at his slightly transparent hand. A tear fell on the palm of my hand, passed through it, and fell to the ground. Jing Xingru opened her mouth slightly, and there was a hint of crying in her voice, which was quickly suppressed by her trying to be normal. How long has it been? She asked. Master Jing's body was shaken, and under his gray hair, his wrinkled face was even more painful. He spoke softly, as if he was afraid of scaring his daughter. 14 years. 14 years. Jing Xingru looked at Jing Niansi who was watching him cry. Although his eyes were red, he still tried his best to smile gently and asked Jing Niansi in a soft voice, Are you 14 years old? Jing Niansi wiped away her tears and nodded. Jing Xingru's smile deepened and he said softly, Be good, don't cry, people will have such a day. RUER. The suppressed and painful cry of the head of the Jing family brought more tears to Jing Xingru's face, but she did not cry in pain like her father and daughter, but patted her father's back gently. Dad, don't cry. I'm fine. It's not painful or itchy. After she finished speaking, she looked at Ji Chang's again. Your eyes. Ji Chang's reached out and touched the white cloth. It will be fine after a while. RUER, I broke my promise. Without. Jing Xingru interrupted him and did not let Ji Chang's continue. She wiped her tears and looked at the person in front of her seriously. Now that you can stand in front of me, you have broken your promise. I know you will come back. It may be a little late, but one day you will come back. Jing Xingru is even better than Ji Chang's imagined. After she quickly figured out the situation, She immediately positioned herself as a pacifier, without thinking deeply about what she was going to do in the future. Boom! The Shuradeo in the sky seemed to feel the breath of the dead. It roared wildly, its eyes widened, and it swayed left and right to search below, making a sound like thunder. Ji Chang's opened the window and felt the outside. "I'll go down to Shura Road and open the door first, and you guys can have a nice chat." He hurried out, his back carrying an unbearable sadness. He showed the emotion that Jing family would like to see, or that they would feel comforted after seeing it. But Jing's Ingru was much better than he imagined. Ji Chang's knew that sweet words were not what she needed most at this time. What she needed most was already obtained after seeing Jing family master, Jing Nian Si, and Ji Chang's. He arrived in the courtyard and flew up to the Shura Road above. Standing at the gate, he pulled out the door knocker made of eyes and clicked the button. "Open the door." The screams of evil spirits came from inside. The sounds were sad and full of malice, as if Ji Chang's would be doomed if he dared to open the door. However, Ji Chang's was not affected at all. Seeing that Shuradeo couldn't open the door, he untied the white cloth covering his eyes, closed his eyes and poured his spiritual power into the white cloth. The white cloth floated forward and landed in front of the gate of Shura Road. Ji Chang's flicked his hand, and it tightened the Shura gate violently with its vigorous spiritual power. Painful screams rang out high in the air. The sound was too loud. Ji Chang's waved his hand again, and Bai Buletin used more force. This time it stopped barking. It didn't even have the strength to scream. "Ji Chang's, open the door." Shuramen shook and tried to escape, but it only caused the devil in front of him to increase his spiritual power. It howled unwillingly. Seeing that it was really uncooperative, Ji Chang said directly, "If you don't open the door, I will immediately tell the monks all over the world that Shura Tao excludes strangers not to protect strangers but to protect themselves. By then, the entire eastern continent will know that Shuradeo is afraid of the aura of the living. They are so afraid that they won't even dare to accept a woman who died in childbirth with only a trace of the aura of the living. Guess these monks who are fighting against the sky regard you as a savage beast. What will they do? Will everyone come to Shuradeo together, or will your door be torn apart?" Shura said. It opened the door immediately, so fast that it almost didn't write a welcome sign on the door. As soon as the door opened, the evil spirits thought it was a new soul coming from outside, so they rushed forward one by one, with their mouths wide open, waiting for a feast. Squeezing in the front were a few demon cultivators. They had just become evil spirits, and the feeling of going from heaven to hell and back to heaven was almost overwhelming, and they were squeezing to the front. Then they saw the monk in white sitting at the door of Shura Road, slowly tying a white cloth around his eyes. It looked like he was alive, and his whole body was filled with vigorous spiritual energy. Combined with this, Shuradeo opens its doors in broad daylight. Demon cultivators and evil spirits. Yes, they were directly killed by Ji Chang's not long ago. Moreover, after his death, he was accused of destroying Ji Chang's sect. Unexpectedly, this man would not let them go even after they were all dead. The demon cultivators didn't even think about resisting, they turned around and ran away, howling as they ran. "We are really innocent. Your master's sect was destroyed and you didn't care about our business. I have something wrong with your brain. You killed us and even chased us to Shuradeo." They desperately tried to squeeze back and escape, but there were too many evil spirits coming up from behind, and they couldn't go back at all. So I could only squeeze in as hard as I could and howl for mercy. He has already died once, and if he dies again, he will be completely dead. Ji Chang's had no intention of chasing after him. He is a living person now, and it is better to leave the world of the dead alone. But when he thought about it, those evil spirits who didn't know what he was capable of didn't know what was going on, and they were still opening their mouths wide and biting the air at him. These evil spirits have been down there for so long that they can no longer speak, but that doesn't stop them from expressing what they want to say through their actions. Taking the current situation as an example, most of the evil spirits probably want to say, "Come here, if you have the guts, sit at the door. If you have the guts, come in and see if we don't eat you." Of course, in Ji Chang's ears, the sounds made by these evil spirits were #yuan %. Anyway, I can't understand a single word. It's quite noisy. He took out a fruit from his arms, ate it with a bang, and said to the evil spirits, "Don't make any noise." Evil spirits, #yuan %, #yuan. The demon cultivators who died at the hands of Ji Chang's and could not squeeze back no matter how hard they squeezed were going crazy. Didn't you hear him say, "Stop arguing"? Stop arguing. Do you want to die? Evil spirits, #yuan %, #yuan. Seeing that they were still noisy, Ji Chang's took out the sword given to him by Zilin Hai and took it out directly. The hilt of the sword came down by itself, and the sharp sword body carried spiritual power and slashed towards the group of evil spirits. As soon as the sword went down, a deep ditch immediately appeared on the ground of Shuradeo. The sword completed its task and flew into the hilt. The blindfolded monk in white still sat there with an arrogant attitude, holding a sword in his hand, and the belt tied to the back of his head fluttered in the wind. No matter how you look at it, it looks very charming. But in the eyes of evil spirits, the monks in front of them were like devils. The devil spoke, "If you keep making noise, I don't mind letting it die again." Evil ghosts. They turned around and bowed their heads as quietly as chickens, and left quietly. The magic cultivators managed to escape together among them. For a time, the front door of Shuradeo was as pure as ever. Seeing that Ji Chang's back was turned to him and not looking this way, Shuramen quietly moved the door knocker and moved the doors on both sides bit by bit in an attempt to close them. Just as he was about to succeed, a slender white hand blocked the crack of the door. The monk, who had no idea why he was so powerful, said in a cold voice, "Open it." Shuramen. This is unreasonable. How could it listen to a monk? Unreasonable and unreasonable. So, it unreasonably opened the door again. Ji Chang sat there and waited. Until he felt Jing Xingru slowly leave the house and walk into the yard. He flew down, pulled Jing Xingru and flew to Shura's door again. "There is still some time, do you want to talk to your father-in-law every year again?" "No need." Jing Xingru's eyes were still red and her expression was relatively calm. She shook her head and said softly, "Sooner or later, we have to leave. I have said everything that needs to be said. Let's go." Ji Chang's nodded silently and took her hand into the gate. Feeling Jing Xingru holding his hand tightly, he asked, "I have never been to Shura Road, what is it like here?" Hearing his words, Jing Xingru's fear in her heart eased slightly. She looked around and tried to describe, "The ground is dark and there are stones everywhere, but there are none on the road under our feet. Many people are wearing strange clothes. They were strange and ragged, and they were looking at us with scary eyes." Ji Chang's nodded understandingly. He raised his voice and said, "Close your eyes. Evil spirits. That's too much. This is their territory." Ji Chang's held Jing Xingru in one hand and moved forward threateningly with a sword in his other hand. "Evil ghosts. Okay, just close your eyes." Jing Xingru closed his eyes one after another as he looked at them, no matter they were big or small or even uglier. Without the greedy gaze that chilled people's hearts, she relaxed slightly. "Where are we going now?" "Sending you to reincarnation." Ji Chang's kept walking and turned back to face her, "I have chosen a house for you on the samsara path. You're always so sweet." Jing Xingru sighed with a smile. She looked at the person in front of her. He has slow steps and a slender figure. Although he has lived as a mortal for more than 10 years, his face has no wrinkles. She was held by his hand, taking 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. She didn't know how long she walked before she arrived in front of the path of reincarnation. This is not the time for the reincarnation Tao to randomly select ghosts to go to the afterlife every month. It is forced to open for business now, and it is a little irritable. But this impatience immediately disappeared without a trace when he saw Ji Chang's placing the sword in front of him. It even thoughtfully included a list of fetuses whose souls needed to be reincarnated at the entrance to reincarnation. Ji Chang's is confirming the list. Jingxing Gru stood at the entrance to the reincarnation path, looking at the flying stars inside. The souls who need to die enter from here and are then sent to where they should go. She turned around and looked at Ji Chang's, who was lowering his head to select the list with his fingers, and said softly, "I've heard it said every year, and I really don't blame you. My destiny is like this. Since it has become like this, it is better to take it calmly and practice well. Don't be trapped by me." Jingxing Gru was very calm when he said this. She looked at Ji Chang's paused movements and smiled slightly. "I am very lucky to be able to see you, my father and Nian Nian. I will leave it to you every year. My father, I also ask you to take care of me. I have waited for this life, and I have no regrets." Ji Chang's finalized the list. He walked up to Jingxing Gru and took off the white cloth from his eyes. With eyes closed, he stretched out his hand to light it, and brought the spiritual power to his brow. Jingniansi felt the warmth between his eyebrows, touched it curiously, and asked, "What is this?" "It will protect you." Ji Chang's once told everyone that he gave Jingxing Gru his body protecting spiritual power, and even Jingxing Gru himself felt so. Then it should really be sent. After all, he has always been honest. Time is up. Jingxing Gru glanced at Ji Chang's for the last time, opened his mouth to say something, but still couldn't say anything. He turned around and jumped into the reincarnation. It is natural to have regrets when you die at a young age. But regret cannot be the reason for her willfulness. Only by leaving well would she live up to her family. Ji Chang stood in front of the Samsara road and watched Jingxing Gru's figure gradually disappear before leaving. He exited the Shura path, and the gate of the Shura path slowly closed behind him and then slowly disappeared. The head of the Jing family in the yard saw Ji Chang's coming out alone, turned around and entered the house with red eyes. Jingniansi quickly chased after him. "Grandpa, Master Nagasawa said he would send my mother to a good family. My mother will definitely live a good life." Patriarch Jing wiped his tears and sighed, "Don't call him Nagasawa, he is your father." Jingniansi looked at him timidly, "Aren't you angry?" Patriarch Jing shook his head. "Your mother told me not to hate anyone." He paused and then said, "I don't hate him, can I beat him up?" During the Battle of Dandong City, in addition to the emergence of a group of outstanding figures such as Nagasawa Genrin, there was also a gossip that the Tianyuan sect's patriarch and his son accidentally overturned their car when they were retrieved by the Tianyuan sect and taken to Dandong City. The thing is, because there are many captives of demon cultivators in Dandong City, the method given by the Eastern continent is to use the heart questing stone to detect these demon cultivators. Generally, the heart questing stone can detect the crimes committed by the demon cultivator, and then the monks will classify how to treat the demon cultivator based on the size of these crimes. The disciples of Tianyuan sect are responsible for this project. Because Wang Huli was found, as the son of the sect leader, he naturally had to work with him. As a result, he was still working, but he didn't know how he operated. He was obviously asking the demon cultivator, but the questioning heartstone was aimed at himself. In full view of everyone, at least a dozen crimes appeared on the heart questioning stone. Among them, pushing Jing Nian Si to join the group of strange beasts is not the most serious. The most serious thing is that he killed 3 talented senior brothers in Tianyuan sect in order to compete for the position of the sect leader's successor. Almost all the monks standing in that circle saw it. Even the Tianyuan sect disciple closest to Wang Huli was his own brother who killed his senior brother. So this time Tianyuan sect exploded. Wang Hu was immediately drained of his spiritual power and imprisoned to await his return to the eastern continent for disposal. Tianyuan sect also hurriedly sent people to Changle City to apologize to Jingnian Si. Under the two cities of Dandong and Changle, Ji Changs worked hard to defeat demons and cultivate. What happened to him had already spread throughout the entire continent. He was originally a disciple of the Wancheo sect, a lineage of pure medical cultivators. In order to save his sweetheart, King Nai, the demon cultivator, destroyed the entire Wancheo sect, leaving only Ji Changs to escape. After that, he lurked for more than 10 years, created his own skills, and gambled on his own spiritual power. After more than 10 years, he directly killed King Nai. No one knows how high his strength is, but since he can enter the Shuradeo and send away his wife's soul, he is definitely higher than many elders of major sects. And Jingniansi, who was almost killed by Wang Huli, was Ji Chang's biological daughter. When Wang Huli offended Jingniansi, he offended Ji Chang's. The Tianyuan sect almost lowered himself to the ground to apologize to them, because he was afraid that Ji Changs would hate the Tianyuan sect because of this incident. Speaking of which, Wang Hu's exposure was also due to Ji Changs. When Ji Changs proposed to join the Tianyuan sect, Wang Huli strongly opposed it, so he later joined the Zhenhuo section. Such a golden leg was lost by him. The disciples of the Tianyuan sect who were present at the time, there was resentment towards Wang Huli in his heart. Just when they needed to test the magic cultivator, one of the disciples wanted to play a trick on Wang Huli. I didn't expect that such a tease would lead to so many things. Ji Changs does not hold grudges. He didn't have the time to think about anything else right now. 8 months later, his eyes recovered. After some time, a visitor came to the Jing family. It is a young monk and his wife who have been traveling around this continent. Their daughter had just turned 1 month old, so Ji Changs invited her and came with her baby in her arms. Ji Changs held the child, looked at it, and handed it to the head of the Jing family. This child is good, does he have spiritual roots? The young monk couple's faces were full of happiness and love. Yes, it's Tianligan. The child is good and doesn't make trouble. We used to travel everywhere without stopping. Now that we have a child, we have to consider it. We have already planned back to the eastern continent. The child's father smiled and said, "My master said that this child will be very senior when she returns. However, she has good spiritual roots and fast cultivation, so she can live up to the seniority. We don't expect her to have high achievements or safety in the future. Just fine." The head of the Jing family took the child, carefully uncovered the corner of the swaddling clothes, looked at the blush on her eyebrows, and smiled with satisfaction. "Don't worry, since you love her so much, she will always be safe and well in the future. Everyone knows I'm a good man." Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 82. Ji Chang stayed in the True Fire sect for 100 years. When I left, I was already very good in my cultivation and became an elder in the True Fire sect. Because of Ji Chang's joining, the True Fire sect gradually moved from a small sect to a medium sect, and finally to the leading large sect. No one doesn't know that all this is because of Ji Chang's. This person is so evil at such a young age that he can create his own martial arts. The baby girl with the red mole on her eyebrows has gradually grown up. The sect her parents belong to is a medium-sized sect and is affiliated with the True Fire sect. The baby girl has Tianligan, and her cultivation is much faster than others. And because her parents have a high status in the sect, she has been pampered since she was a child. She is a person who is keen on chivalry and justice. Since Jin Dan after that, he left the sect and traveled around. It's not like I never encountered dangerous situations, but I was able to turn the danger into safety every time. She may never know in this life that she has always been protected by the body-protecting spiritual power of a monk in the tribulation stage. She also doesn't know that the strongest female elder of the True Fire sect, whose sect is backed by her, has been silently paying attention to her. Jingniancy never bothered her and never came in front of her. She just watched the other party grow up smoothly and gradually become a famous female cultivator in the eastern continent. In the first 100 years, Ji Chang's announced that he would ascend. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Ji Yintianlei took him up. Ding! The mission is completed and the main props have returned to normal. Please select vacation to continue the mission. Continue the mission. A few years later, a monk ascended from the eastern continent. After going up there, I searched around, but I couldn't find the amazingly talented Nagasawa master. Strange. He rubbed his head and found a cave to enter, but he didn't think much about it. Ji Chang's opened his eyes and found a mess at his feet. Shovels, bows and arrows, barbecue grills, various knives, and even buckets. Is this a grocery store? He looked around again and found that this should be a large storage room, which was densely packed with things. There were sounds of women sobbing and babies crying outside. The woman cried for a while and then used a crying voice to comfort the baby. After the baby stopped crying, she did not enter the house. Instead, she said directly through the door, "I have made it clear. I know why you bought these messy things. Now you have to give me all the money at home after using it. There is no liquidity left in the book, that's it, let's get divorced. I don't ask for the money you spent. We both worked hard to buy this house. The house was sold to us half and half, Xiaobao and I, that's it." After she finished speaking for a while, there was a sound of the door closing outside, and she obviously left with the child. Ji Chang's refined the information. He is the woman's husband, and they have a child, probably a baby, named Xiaobao. And according to the meaning of the woman's words, the original owner should have cheated on her. Ji Chang's began to check the memory. Then it was discovered that the original owner had indeed cheated on her. No, to be more precise, it should be that he wants to cheat. The woman who talked to him before was his wife, and the baby was indeed their child. The two were college classmates. They fell in love when they were in college. After graduation, they got married and started working together in their careers. The original owner was quite hard-working, plus together with his wife, the two started from scratch and soon had a fortune of millions. 1 or 2 million is not much for a big city, but it is definitely a lot of money for two people who are both from rural areas. The original owner felt that he was successful in his career and liked to be called boss. When you get rich, you start to dislike your wife who is a loser. He prefers an 18 or 19-year-old student to his wife, who is not yet 30 but is still very close. How does that sentence go? A man loves his first love persistently. More than 40 years later, what he loves in his heart is still his first love, but what he loves is the young and beautiful girl from 40 years ago. She is not an old woman who will age like herself after more than 40 years. Especially after my wife became pregnant, she did not dare to use cosmetics for the sake of the child. Sun exposure made her skin darker than before, with spots on her face, and her feet were ugly due to edema, etc. Although his wife quickly returned to her original sophistication after giving birth to the child, the original owner still lost interest in her. He began to go out frequently at night, using the excuse of discussing business, but he never concluded a business deal. The wife also noticed it, but the child was still young and needed someone to take care of her, so she really didn't have the energy to think about anything else. The original owner met a young girl at this time, 19 years old, still in college. He was infatuated with her, but the other person was not the kind of person who would do anything for money. After knowing that the original owner had a wife, she never wanted to have too much contact with the original owner, and she also liked someone who was from her school. Senior, in order to have more opportunities with the people she likes, she also joined the adventure club after learning that her senior planned to go on a wild adventure. In order to get close to the girl, the original owner also joined the adventure club through social networks as a senior who also came from this school. He knew that if the girl knew that he had that kind of interest in her, she would immediately avoid it and never give him a favor again. His chances of getting close. So the original owner lied and claimed that he was an adventure fan, and went all out to do so. The room where Ji Chang's was standing now contained some things that the original owner had purchased that he needed to go on an adventure. After going out with the expedition a few times, the original owner came into contact with other people on the same expedition, several of whom were members of the AB clan. There are prepared people, a new ethnic group born due to the frequent disasters in the world today. They often make some instinctive preparations for various potential disasters, such as carrying life-saving supplies with them as much as possible. For wealthy people, if they really spend money, it will definitely be a waste of money. At first, he felt that these wealthy people had nowhere to spend their money and were working hard on things that didn't exist. But one day while listening to two wealthy people chatting, they mentioned that they had spent high prices to find connections and bought something. One of them paid twice as much. He was not willing to sell it even if the price was given to him, so he suddenly had an idea. The original owner had wanted to divorce for a long time, but whether it was working capital, property, or real estate, he and his wife worked hard together. If they divorced, the other party would be able to share at least half of it. But what if he spends all the money? It is a perfect idea to spend all the marital assets while you are still married and then cash them out after the divorce is successful. What a perfect excuse to have Bazoo. He will become a yubei and spend money to buy various high-priced items. And because he has established a social relationship with the real yubei, after the divorce is successful, the accumulated items can be sold at the original price or even a higher price. As long as he can ensure that these things are what the tribesmen want. Thus began a plan to get all the family property and get a divorce. The original owner began to spend high prices to buy various supplies. He would store the cheap ones at home and put the expensive ones outside. He knew that his wife would definitely not be able to bear it if he brought back a bunch of messy things like this every day and spent money like water. Not only his wife, but his parents as well as his parents would think that he was obsessed. And this is the effect he wants. He spends money every day just waiting for his wife to initiate divorce. As expected, when he met with the agent to discuss buying a house to buy his supplies, his wife couldn't bear it anymore and filed for divorce from him. Although he still lost half of the price of the house, thinking about how much money those supplies would cost, the original owner was quite satisfied with the current situation. He doesn't have much nostalgia for his son. As for children, he will have as many as he wants in the future. After the divorce is successful, the original owner can start pursuing the girl she likes. Although she has been rejecting him and clearly stated that she has someone she likes, the original owner always insists that her rejection is because he is married. But just when he was preparing to divorce and successfully dispose of those materials, the end of the world came. On that day, it was originally still daytime, and there was no report of a solar eclipse on the news, but the sun disappeared and the earth was pitch black. At the same time, all signals failed, satellites in the sky fell, and meteorites like meteors fell randomly, falling all over the world. The largest one directly destroyed a continent. The smallest one can destroy a building. After a meteor shower has passed, no one knows how many humans are left. When everything calms down, the real end of the world comes. Plants began to grow wildly, some just grew larger, and some began to attack humans. If you have a small potted tomato plant at home, congratulations, you have a big tomato. But if you have a Venus flytrap at home, anyway, the picture won't look too good. The original city was covered by grass taller than a person overnight, and the trees became extremely tall. The original low-rise buildings were no longer visible, and only some tall buildings that were not hit by meteorites were still standing. But the city has turned into a forest, and the biggest impact is that the forest is suitable for animals to live and live. Animals in the zoo come to the forest and thrive in it. Rabbits are fine, but wolves, tigers, and lions are not vegetarians. Without human intervention, in such an environment, they successfully established a food chain and quickly took root in the forest and plain. And humans, what do they have? Without communication and the internet, the remaining human beings who have long been accustomed to modernization and can solve all life problems without leaving home have to face a primitive world. Mutated plants that would attack them without warning. Various large animals that regard the city as their own territory. It is obvious that human beings will not live well without technology. However, the original owner had supplies that ordinary people could not imagine. He began to hide at home and stayed at home until his wife ran back with her child in her arms. The child had a high fever at the time and she could not find medicine everywhere, so she came back. Seek help from the original owner. But through the small gap in the door, the original owner saw a wolf heading towards his wife who was knocking on the door. At this time, he opened the door and pulled the person in. No matter how sharp the wolf's teeth were, he could not bite the steel door. But he didn't do that, nor did he remind his wife. The wolf dragged away his wife, but she still protected the baby in her arms until her death. After that, the girl came here with the person she liked, and when they got downstairs, the original owner shouted for them to come up. He warmly welcomed them in and invited them to drink milk. The girl didn't like him. She was wary. Although the original owner had always been friendly towards her, she had a gut feeling that the original owner was not a good person. She didn't drink, but the person she liked didn't take any precautions and just drank the glass of milk. Then the guy the girl liked was thrown downstairs. 3 months later, the girl, covered in injuries, jumped downstairs. Those memories were too dark, so Ji Chang's just schemed them and took a rough look at them. Before the end of the world came, the original owner was just thinking about it in his mind and did not dare to do anything on the surface. When the end of the world comes, the law becomes ineffective, people have no bottom line, and he stays alone in the house for a long time. He is almost half crazy. About half a year later, the original owner finally died from ZISA. Because the original owner had been squatting at home until he died, and most of his memories were of him eating and drinking. Ji Chang skipped through the book and turned on his phone to check the time. Well, pretty good. The apocalypse is just 1 second away. As soon as this idea appeared, the light source disappeared. It was obviously daytime but everything was pitch black. Then fire came from the sky, meteors fell, and there was a huge roar and the sound of the collapse of high-rise buildings being hit by meteorites. It was accompanied by people screaming. Ji Chang's knew that the building he was in would not be affected by meteorites. He walked forward in the dark and stood by the window looking at the meteorites flying in the sky. The end is coming. And he only had a room full of supplies. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 83. Chapter 12. Ji Chang sat on the balcony, wrapping the handle of the knife in his hand with cloth in circles to absorb sweat. This is a big Gonda Zero. The original owner bought it from a retired tribe. He specially ordered someone to order it. The blade is sharp. At first, the seller said it was for chopping bones as if for fun, but after the original owner bought it, he kept it. Set aside. Fortunately, the original owner also bought a whetstone. There is no memory of the original owner where his wife Guo Junyuan went during this period, but since nothing has changed when he arrived, mother and son should be safe now. People in this building panicked after it started to rain meteorites outside. From their field of vision, they could see that tall buildings outside were completely destroyed by meteorites. They were so frightened that they fled the building where they lived. Ji Chang's next door neighbor didn't run away. His family has a son in his 20s. He just graduated and ran a public account by himself. He is also a freelancer. He was suffering from a high fever before the meteorite fell. He was so groggy that he couldn't wake up at all. My parents moved it for a long time but couldn't move it. It was impossible to leave their son and run away. The couple was extremely anxious. When the hostess came out to see what was going on outside, she found Ji Chang's who was sharpening his knife. The balconies of their neighbors in their community are next to each other, and when they open the window, they can hear shouting and other things because they have balconies, which is fine. This family has a good relationship with Guo Junyuan, and they often help her take care of the baby when it is inconvenient for her to take care of her baby. They have little contact with the original owner who leaves early and comes home late, and occasionally stays out all night. After knowing that he has spent all the family's money, I was filled with indignation over this, but now that the situation is urgent, I don't care so much anymore. She anxiously opened the window and shouted, "Dad, can you help me? My Chuan has a fever and is unconscious. His father and I want to carry him downstairs but we can't." Ji Chang's didn't even raise his head. He still lowered his head and sharpened the knife. While sharpening, he said, "I advise you not to go out. I just listened to it on the radio. This is a global disaster. Meteorites fall completely randomly. It's not that you won't be hit if you don't go out. On the contrary, if you hide in a tall building, even if the meteorite does fall, we will. This is the 13th floor, and there is the 17th floor above. It can also be a buffer for us. Now there is no signal on either mobile phones or computers. No one knows what will happen after the meteorite falls. It is not something from the earth, it is a virus. It may be an alien creature. The chance of death is half and half when going out and half when staying at home. If you are lucky enough to survive, we don't know what this kind of alien meteorite will bring. At least it is familiar territory at home, and the survival rate is also good. Bigger. Listening to him talking about such a long list of hostesses. She was nearly 50 years old, so what she said seemed right. She hurried in with a confused expression and repeated Ji Chang's words to her husband. Her husband was very angry after hearing this. Do you believe what he said? If he doesn't go out, will we wait for death at home? If he doesn't help, forget it. Let's lift Chuan up quickly. The fat young man on the bed was not very conscious, but he could hear what his parents said and knew what the situation was. He pushed himself up and sat up. Yes, he is right. Mom and Dad, please help me go to the balcony to have a look. What time has it been? If you don't run for your life, why are you watching? The couple wanted to drag him away directly, but the son insisted and they could only help him to the balcony. The young fat man stood on the balcony, opened the window, turned on the flashlight on his mobile phone, and shined his light on the meteorite that swished to the ground outside. There were fires and screams everywhere on the ground, and no hospital came to rescue because the largest hospital in the city had been destroyed by a meteorite. Mom! He muttered to himself, and his mother standing beside him was not in the mood to scold him for not using swear words. They looked up at the falling meteorites above, and they had never felt so clearly as at this moment that they were only the smallest part of the universe. She asked, "Then shall we still run?" Ji Chang's, who was next door, said coolly, "Before you run away, take a look at the leeks you grow at home." Chinese chives? Their leeks are grown on the balcony, and the flower pots they use include not only leeks, but also peppers, green onions, potatoes, etc., which makes them quite comfortable. But now, the flashlight flashed by, and these vegetables in the flower pots were growing rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. The leeks were already half a person tall, and the peppers were each as big as a fist. Ah! The hostess immediately screamed in fright, and the male host immediately stepped forward to protect his wife and son, watching them carefully as they were still growing. Their son thought of something and took a photo downstairs with his mobile phone. He could see that the various lawn trees in the community were growing wildly. The originally beautifully trimmed lawns grew into large grasslands. Someone screamed loudly. The light source immediately chased after him. He was shocked to find that a large and scary vine had wrapped itself around the man and was still tightening violently. It's like a giant python is hunting. The man screamed and finally became silent. This scene was so terrifying that he was so frightened that he couldn't move. Another ray of light also shone through. He looked over subconsciously. Because the balcony next door was lit with candles, he could see roughly. The next door neighbor, who was said to have had an affair outside, was holding a telescope and looking at it. After reading, he put the telescope on the right, picked up the pen and paper on the table on the left, and wrote something down. Li Hechuan, what are you writing? Ji Chang's kept writing, I am remembering the appearance of that vine and the way it hurts people. If we survive, we cannot stay at home all our lives. If we go out, we may encounter it or plants similar to it. Write it down so that we can avoid it or find out how to kill it. After finishing the note, he raised his head and finally looked at his neighbor. Can you use your leeks for me? I want to try some method to kill them. Li Hechuan. How long has it been? I heard that this man is a businessman, but he seems to be an experimental maniac. But in the end, their family opened the window and sent the leeks and the flower pot through a pole rope provided by Ji Chang's. As for other plants, their family members opened the windows and threw them out. After seeing the man attacked by the vines, they would never go downstairs, but they also didn't dare to stay with these inexplicably growing plants. Being so frightened, Li Hechuan felt that he had sobered up a lot. He couldn't run away if there was real danger anyway, so he simply sat on the balcony and watched Ji Chang's working there through the glass. While watching, Ji Chang's took out a small folding stove and a piece of toilet paper. He vaguely looked at something like a small stick in his hand, and then scraped it quickly with a knife blade. The toilet paper immediately caught fire. Li Hechuan. Drilling wood to make fire. But he didn't drill either. Ji Chang's calmly took the newspaper prepared aside and lit it. After the fire began to steady in the stove, he took the leeks and roasted them directly. The leek catches fire and wilts quickly, just like a normal leek. So Comrade Li Hechuan watched helplessly as Ji Chang's burned the leek and the rhizome to death. After making sure that only soil was burned, he nodded with satisfaction. Li Hechuan, what did you use to light the fire? Magnesium stick, Ji Chang's replied quite naturally. Li Hechuan. What is a magnesium rod? Ji Chang's opened his palm and showed him the magnesium rod in his palm. Do you want magnesium rod and flint? If so, I will pass it to you with a drawstring. Li Hechuan, who didn't know about magnesium rods but knew what flint was immediately moved. At this time, Ji Chang's is just a neighbor, but he is actually willing to give them good things that can be used to start fires. Now the power is out and we only have uncooked rice at home. If it is really a long-term disaster, of course. He had previously scolded Ji Chang's with his friends after he found out about Ji Chang's affair. He didn't expect him to be so kind and selfless, with such a good character. He felt guilty in his heart. Well, thank you, but what will you do if you give it to us? Ji Chang's, it's okay, I have another box. Li Hechuan. And, a box? Magnesium rods should be uncommon. After all, everyone uses lighters or something. He also had no living tools because no one at home smoked. In the end, Ji Chang's passed the magnesium rod to the family by pulling the rope. The original owner did not remember the existence of this family. It is very likely that they all went downstairs and never came back. This is the world where Ji Chang's has experienced the easiest way to express himself. Because in the memory of the original owner, apart from squatting at home, he did not know about other major events. However, This also means that Ji Chang's will be limited in predicting the future, although he basically does not need to predict the future. He looked at the watch on his hand and continued sharpening the knife. When the meteorite stops, he will go downstairs to retrieve Guo Junyuan and the child. It is best to find some supplies while detecting the surrounding environment. The original owner bought it just to show off, so in addition to stocking some instant noodles and mineral water at home, the rest is some equipment and utensils, and he still needs to stock up on food and drink. So, Li Hechuan discovered that after sharpening his knife for a while, the neighbor next door moved a bunch of things to the balcony. While observing the outside environment, he put on military equipment, a green camouflage uniform, a rope, and a military kettle hung around his waist. Ji Chang's then opened his backpack and began to put compasses, compressed biscuits, maps, flashlights, medical kits, telescopes, gloves, masks, and cans inside. He even saw Ji Chang sitting there assembling an air gun. Li Hechuan. After getting ready, Ji Chang sat there and continued to sharpen the knife. Li Hechuan. He returned to the house with a confused look on his face. In the house, my parents found a steel basin and tried to make a fire to cook porridge. Seeing him come in, he sighed, I didn't expect that although Xiaobeo's father cheated on him, he is such a good character that he would be willing to share this with us at this time. Li Hechuan, maybe he really didn't cheat. In the past, Ji Chang's was away from home almost every day. He would leave as soon as someone called him downstairs. Guo Junyuan didn't say anything to the outside world, but when he first learned that Ji Chang's had spent all the family's money, he collapsed on the spot and many people saw it. In addition, he has been entertaining constantly before. Many people have seen him suddenly change his personality and become a rich man. He spent his family's money to buy a lot of things and never changed it no matter what his family said. Some people who knew him here said he was out of his mind. Some people have said that he just wanted to make Guo Junyuan unable to bear the divorce. Li Hechuan felt the same way before, and when his parents talked about it, they were sure that Ji Chang's wanted to force Guo Junyuan to speak on his own. But now, thinking of the way Ji Chang's neatly assembled the air gun just now, he looked serious. Either he has a tribe, or he's an agent. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 84. Chapter 13. While Ji Chang's waited quietly, the meteorite rain finally stopped. It's still dark outside, but screams and calls for help are always going on. This is the most chaotic time, with cars driving randomly, humans being stimulated to the point of mental collapse, and plants that have just mutated and are eager to show off their skills. And the animals in the zoo that were released because of this accident. There was a mess downstairs, and it looked like it wouldn't be bright for a while. Ji Chang simply lit a candle and went to the house to sort out the supplies that had been piled up in a mess by the original owner. He was very fast, and in a short time he put the randomly arranged materials according to categories and usage methods. Li Hechuan next door watched for a long time before he appeared on the balcony, and then returned to the house feeling a little disappointed. Inexplicably, as long as he saw Ji Chang sitting there, he would feel at ease. Maybe it was because the other party was calm about the current situation, or maybe it was because of speculation about Ji Chang's identity as an agent. Both families stayed awake and waited for who knows how long until dawn came. After feeling the light, Li Hechuan lowered his head and looked at his watch. The time was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He was surprised and hurried to the window to look outside. The other human survivors are also very excited. Everyone feels that as long as the sun rises, this disaster will definitely be over. Even if this meteorite rain caused casualties and national turmoil, as long as there are still people alive, everything will be fine. At most suffer some hardship. The reality turned out to be crueler than imagined. Everyone soon discovered that there was still no signal on the mobile phones and computers at home, and the TV could not be turned on because there was no power. However, the old man had a radio and could barely hear some inaudible signals. People who have been in cities for a long time have long been accustomed to transportation tools and various electronic communication devices. They can get information from the internet and TV, get entertainment from mobile phones, and just make a phone call to whomever they want. But now these are gone. The elevators cannot operate, and the roads are so damaged that ordinary vehicles cannot drive at all. This is not all. After the water and power outages, the inconveniences of life are not limited to these. Let's use the simplest analogy. It's dark. Most people who have long been accustomed to lighting tools like lamps don't have candles at home. Some even don't even have flashlights. The power of their mobile phones will last for a while. What will happen next? Li Hechuan quickly thought of this. The situation at his house was even worse, because just this morning, there was only a little bit of rice left in his house. Even the water used to cook porridge was bought from his house. They forgot to drink the mineral water. Now either their family will starve to death, or they will go out to find food. But going downstairs to find something to eat? He looked down from the balcony and saw that the vines below were entangled with a wolf who didn't know where it came from. Whether it is a wolf that is entangling prey and vines or being entangled as prey, the sight of it is exciting. Li Hechuan looked down at his fat arms, which belonged to a 200-pound fat man. With his physique, he would be the first to be bitten off as fat if he went down. How to fix it? Just as he was hesitating, he saw Ji Chang's opening the balcony door and coming out. He was carrying a huge bag on his back. The bag was also camouflage. He was also wearing camouflage clothes. He also wore a camouflage hat on his head and neck. There was a telescope hanging on the balcony. When he lowered his head to pick up the long knife on the balcony, there were rows of sharp tools, large and small, hanging next to him. Li Hechuan. The more he looks, the more he looks like an agent. He pondered for several seconds, and when he saw Ji Chang's took the knife and turned around to go out, he quickly boldly shouted, Uncle Ji, are you going out? That's right, although Ji Chang's is only 30 and Li Hechuan is in his 20s, because his parents are the same generation as each other's wives, he has to call them uncle and aunt. Ji Chang stopped what he was doing and turned to look at him. Yes, your aunt took Xiaobao out before. I wanted to go look for them and see if I can find something useful back. Li Hechuan's heart was pounding and he hurriedly offered himself, can I go out with you? I can, okay. It's over, he doesn't know anything. After pausing for a few seconds, he carefully handed his fat paw forward. Can I be the bait? Just share some of the food and drink with me. Please, please. My family is almost out of food now. If we don't find something to eat, we will probably starve to death. Ji Chang's looked at the young neighbor up and down. Evenly white and evenly fat. If he moves, the flesh on his thighs will jiggle. To those animals and plants, it should be a soft persimmon. A man carefully hid in the building, using the shadow to avoid the too harsh sunlight and moving forward. As he was walking, he suddenly heard the crow of a crow. He immediately stopped cautiously and stood where he was. Although it has only been a week since the meteor shower, most of the humans who survived have already figured out the situation. Now there is no water and electricity, the plants have mutated, and the animals are more ferocious than before. Although the size has not changed, because there are so many, the city has basically become a paradise for animals and plants. Hearing crows crow means that there is a rotting corpse nearby. No matter what kind of corpse it is, in this case, it can attract crows without being eaten. Either there are no creatures in this area, or there is a powerful creature here. Now, other creatures don't dare to come. He carefully hid behind the pillar and watched the crow. Ah! 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 The crow screamed and flew over at low altitude. It noticed that there were rotting creatures underneath. After flying in the air for a few times and finding no danger, it cautiously flew down. It just landed on the dead animal and pecked it twice. It was quiet next to it. Standing, a seemingly harmless blade of grass suddenly attacks, spreading its leaves towards it. It had not yet adapted to the fact that its predators actually included plants, so it panicked and tried to fly away, but was immediately closed into the opponent's leaves. The screams of birds rang out hurriedly, and some black feathers floated in the low altitude. Within a minute, the area returned to silence again. The satiated plants returned to their original peaceful appearance, with only the closed leaves still struggling from time to time. A crow that moves a few times can show what has just happened. Gudong. The man swallowed in fear, with cold sweat on his forehead. Just when he was unsure whether to go around the plant or simply go back and look for food in another place, he noticed that a fat man wearing camouflage uniforms and a camouflage hat was walking struttingly in front of the plant. He covered his mouth, feeling that he was about to see the death scene of this fat man. Li Hechuan deliberately swung his fat arms, held his chest up and held his head high. He was able to walk in such a short distance with great variety. Although the plant reacted a little to his fancy way of showing how delicious it was, considering that although the plant was quite wide, it was not as tall as a human being, and it had just caught its prey, it did not attack. Li Hechuan walked over and back again, but the plant didn't move. He walked over and back again, but the plant still didn't move. Finally, when he came back for the third time, the plant became impatient. It has been occupying this area for a few days. Basically, the rapidly developing animals and plants here know it. Every time it passes by, it can hide as far away as possible, but no creature is as arrogant as this human being. Although it caught enough prey to eat for several days, it didn't mind letting this human know why its leaves were so bright. As soon as Li Hechuan reached the middle, it opened its leaves, spit out the crow inside, and headed towards Li Hechuan at a speed that humans could not react at all. Although this human is big, it has evolved anesthetic secretions. As long as Li Hechuan is bitten by it, he will fall down in less than 2 minutes. Ji Chang's was lying in ambush not far away, and when he saw that the opponent was starting to attack, he immediately threw the spear in his hand, hitting the core hidden in the innermost part of its leaves after it opened its leaves, and directly penetrated it. The plant that was so arrogant just now stopped moving in an instant and died quietly on the spot. Only then did Ji Chang's come out of the grass where he was lying, and threw a handkerchief to Li Hechuan to wipe away the cold sweat. He took out the watering bottle on his waist, unscrewed the bottle cap, skillfully broke open the leaves, and poked them open. He picked up the core of this narcotic plant, he named it randomly, which was as big as a normal man's head, put the bottle under it and let the mucus flow out from it. Li Hechuan wiped away the sweat and stepped forward with excitement. "Uncle, this anesthetic grass is big enough, it should be able to make a lot of anesthetics, right?" Ji Chang's motioned for him to take out a larger empty bottle from the bag they were carrying, and nodded, "It's enough for 2 months, but the inventory is not too much. We will look for other places later." The anesthetic liquid produced by these anesthetic grass can be used as an anesthetic, and because it can be diluted 100 times, it is easy to carry. The diluted anesthetic works quickly and causes no other harm. It is definitely the best choice for hunting. The prey obtained it is also safe to use. Ji Chang's has been trying to go out of the circle to find people, but because there are too many powerful animals and plants nearby, he must prepare weapons if he wants to go out. But basically other weapons cannot be recycled, but anesthetics are different. As long as this little bit, no matter what you use to attack, it will work. After accidentally discovering this 3 days ago, this piece of narcotic grass that reigned supreme was destroyed. Ji Chang's took Li Hechuan on a fishing trip and raided it one by one. Seeing Ji Chang's pouring the anesthetic liquid, Li Hechuan reached out and picked the apple-sized fruit from the top of the anesthetic grass and ate it. Smacking his lips, it felt delicious. He took off another one and handed it to Ji Chang's. It's very sweet, uncle. You can have one. If you don't want to eat, you will divide it up later, half for each person. Li Hechuan nodded and said vaguely while chewing, you're going to let my aunt go home for another 3 days if they don't find her? Uncle, you are such a good man. Don't worry, I will definitely help you when I find my aunt and them say something nice and tell auntie that she misunderstood you. Ji Chang's didn't like to eat fruit, but he always kept half of it at home. After 3 days, the fruit was no longer fresh, so he gave it to Li Hechuan and the others. Li Hechuan and his parents knew that he was thinking that if he found his wife and children, he could give them these fruits to eat. It's a pity that they struggled for 7 days and met few living people, let alone Auntie and Xiaobao. Li Hechuan finished eating, took out a large plastic bag from the bag he was carrying on his back, unfolded it and put all the fruits into the bag. Seeing that Ji Chang's was about to finish taking it, he was about to say whether we should look for any more anesthesia grass. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something swaying across from the opposite side. He immediately became vigilant and pulled out the gun from his waist to aim it. Got that? Uncle, there is something. Ji Chang's immediately placed the bottle on the ground, pulled out his spear and quickly sprayed anesthetic on it and pointed it over there. No, no, no. Don't shoot, don't shoot. A man walked out from there with his hands raised. He was so scared that he was shaking when he spoke. I'm not a thing, no, I mean I'm not a bad person, I'm just passing by. Seeing that it was a living person, Li Hechuan was about to put down his guard and put down the gun. When he found that Ji Chang's hadn't moved, he quickly raised it again and pointed it at the opponent. What are you doing? Why are you spying on us? No, no, I'm here first, and you are the ones who come later. Don't shoot, please, please, I still have my wife and children waiting for me to go back. I'll leave right away, without delaying even a second. The man's legs were shaking with fear. Li Hechuan wanted to ask a few more questions. Ji Chang's beside him suddenly asked, have you seen anyone else these days? Have you ever seen someone who looks like he's in his mid-20s, with long black hair and skin, a pretty white-haired woman with a baby? Her name is Guo Junyuan. Li Hechuan sighed in his heart. Uncle Ji was also ill and had to go to the doctor. He would know where Auntie and the others were when he saw a human being. Even in a movie, it definitely can't be acted like this. Man, I know, I know. She is hiding in a place with us. That child is called Xiaobao, right? My wife helped her take care of the child when she went out to find food. Who are you? It's her family member. Li Hechuan. Is this okay? The European Emperor. Ji Chang's immediately put away his spear, stepped forward and asked, are you willing to take me to find her? I can give you food as payment. Seeing that he was no longer hostile to her, the man breathed a sigh of relief and asked cautiously, can you give me something to eat now? I haven't eaten all day, and my stomach hurts from hunger. Ji Chang's raised his left hand to Li Hechuan behind him. Li Hechuan understood, took out a fruit from the plastic bag and handed it to the man. Ji Chang's, it's okay. Just eat, it won't be enough for us. We are all human beings and should help each other. Let alone fruits these days, you can't even find dry food. The man's eyes lit up when he saw it. He hurriedly took it and took a few big bites. While feeling the satisfaction of eating the food, his eyes were red with emotion. Thank you, thank you. I have met others before. They were very vicious. Not only did they take away all my belongings, but they almost killed me. If there hadn't been a bear passing by at that time, they were afraid and ran away. My life would have been lost, all gone. He looked at Ji Chang's in front of him, who had fair complexion, delicate features, and gentle manner, and sniffed. Sure enough, there is still true love in the world. You are really good people. It's okay, we're all human beings. It's normal to be friendly to each other. Don't worry, we'll talk about finding them after we've had a good meal and a drink. I'm an honest person in everything I do. By the way, what's your surname, brother? Not understanding the situation, Ji Chang's didn't mention a word about his relationship with his wife and children, but began to create a carefree image of himself while talking. Behind Ji Chang's, Li Hechuan watched helplessly as Ji Chang's accepted the other party's gratitude and admiration with a smile. He quietly glanced at Uncle Ji's right hand behind his back. On the front, he was talking and laughing freely, but on the back, there was a sharp scalpel between his well-maintained slender fingers. Really honest. After Ji Chang's finished shaping it, he asked Li Hechuan behind him. Chuan said yes, we are all good people. Li Hechuan, yes, yes. We are all good people. The author has something to say. Randomly send out red envelopes. Good night everyone. Xinjiang Literature and the author jointly wish my dear readers and friends, peace and happiness during the Spring Festival holiday. At the same time, we warmly remind everyone to wash hands frequently, wear masks, ventilate more, and gather less. Do you know what just happened? I just finished coding, so I was about to send it out. I remembered that the editor wanted us to send out the above note, so I went back and copied it. Then I came back and found it was midnight. I always thought it was just before 11 o'clock. Is my memory wrong or am I confused? So after losing 9,000 full attendance, now I don't even have 3,000 anymore. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Teng Zhonmao. Chapter 85. Because the attitudes of Ji Chang's and Li Hechuan were very friendly, the man's vigilance was basically relieved along the way. Especially Ji Chang's, his words and movements were gentle, and he seemed to be a well-educated person. In addition, he was full after eating fruits. When he got downstairs in the community, he had already started to face Ji Chang's. One bite is brother Ji. Li Hechuan felt a toothache as he looked at Ji Chang's, who was trying to figure out the man's name, where he lived before and why he came to this area in a warm voice. In the past few days, he had long been accustomed to Uncle Ji not talking too much when he encountered mutated plants or animals. When had he ever seen the other party be so talkative and patient? Although Uncle Ji who talks like this is always accurate in his clichés. That man had almost explained everything about his entire background and experiences. When he reached the downstairs of the community, he skillfully took the key hanging around his neck and opened the door. He watched the two people chatting happily and walked forward. Upstairs, Father Li and Mother Li heard the sound of the door opening and hurriedly poked their heads out from the balcony to see. They were relieved when they saw that they were back. Although they were a little confused about the appearance of the strange man, neither of them made a sound. Stay at home quietly and wait for your son to come back and explain. For Li Hechuan and Ji Chang's, this was just an ordinary trip back home after going out for hunting. But in the eyes of men, everything here is so enviable. Especially when Li Hechuan opened the door and walked directly into the community, taking the lead in walking up the stairs while munching on some fruit. His comfortable and peaceful attitude was something he didn't have among the people he met these days. His name is Fu Hao. He comes from a well-off family. He and his wife work in the same company. Their salaries are not low. In addition, both parents have savings. As soon as they got married, they pooled their money to buy a house for them. They have a car and a house. Savings, unless there is any major accident, this family will definitely be able to live in such comfort, so the two of them naturally have a child. As a result, when the child was just 4 years old, a major accident happened due to the meteorite rain. When the meteorite rain occurred, he, his wife and children happened to be on their way back. As soon as they parked the car and came out of the underground garage, they witnessed the building where they lived being destroyed by a meteorite. He and his wife's parents were both because of this. The child has a birthday and comes to celebrate. A meteorite fell, and he and his wife lost their parents at the same time. The two of them thought this was the cruelest thing. Unexpectedly, when the meteorite rain stopped, traffic was paralyzed, power and water were cut off, plants that could sharien appeared, and large beasts who didn't know where they came from, they had already become accustomed to it. Human beings who have entered modern life have almost no power to resist. The only reason their family of 3 could survive was because their children were hungry. The 3 of them went to the nearest high-rise building. As a result, they witnessed from the window that the humans on the ground were being destroyed in various ways. This way results in life. For the past 2 days, they hid upstairs and did not dare to go downstairs, witnessing the horror of these animals and plants. On the 3rd day, they went downstairs and managed to avoid these mutated creatures, but were almost killed by strangers who were also human beings. Human beings have strong adaptability. On the 7th day, facing a world that had long since turned into a prairie, in which tall buildings seemed a bit out of place, they had formed a temporary team with some people and lived in an office building. On the first floor of a building, a group of people can feel more at ease living together, and if something happens on the first floor, they can easily run away. Now that we have a place to live, we have to keep up with food and drink. They are all strangers. Although they live together due to unexpected circumstances, few people are willing to trust people they don't know when they go out to find food and drinks, so they team up with people they know and go alone. For one person, you need to find other strangers and convince them to form a team with you. Among the people who went out together as a team, the most unpopular ones were naturally the women. After all, women were weak and ran slowly. Although Fu Hao is a man, he is too thin. He was in poor health after sitting in an office for a long time. He was out of breath when running. No one was very willing to form a team with him. His wife was willing to go out with him, but the child was only 4 years old, so she took him out with him. It was impossible to stay, so in the end he teamed up with Guo Junyuan, who also had children. While going up the stairs, Fu Hao said, "In the first few days, I couldn't figure out the situation. Junyuan and I went out together a few times, and my wife watched the child. Sometimes my wife and I went out, and she watched the child. The day before yesterday, we went out separately because we might not find anything together. When she went out, Xiaobao asked my wife to help take care of her. When she came back, she would give us some food as a thank you gift." After saying that, he glanced at Ji Chang's, who was following him quietly and listening to his words. "Are you looking for her? Who is she to you?" After figuring out the situation, Ji Chang's didn't avoid the topic deliberately and said directly, "She is my wife." Fu Hao's eyes suddenly looked strange when he looked at Ji Chang's. Ji Chang's glanced at him and said quite understandingly, "Did Junyuan say something about me? We just finished our quarrel before the meteorite rain." No. Seeing that he misunderstood, Fu Hao quickly waved his hand in denial. He explained, "It's not Junyuan, she didn't tell you about you, it's someone who lives with us. He seems to be Junyuan's classmate. Maybe he saw Junyuan alone with her child, so she said something." Because the other party was speaking ill of Ji Chang's, Fu Hao was too embarrassed to speak too clearly and kept it vague. "Classmate? Ji Chang's, which classmate? Do you know his name? I heard Junyuan call him Chen Delu." Ji Chang searched for the name Fu Hao mentioned in his mind. Most of the original owner's memories were when he was trapped in the house. He searched for a few seconds before pulling out this person from the corner of his memory. Chen Lu was a college classmate of the original owner and Guo Junyuan. Not only did he have this relationship, he was also from the same village as the original owner. His parents were still neighbors to the original owner's parents, but they didn't get along very well. The two families were actually very similar in every aspect. For example, the male owners of both families were not very talkative, and the female owners of both families were both strong-tempered. Chen's Lu and the original owner were of the same age and month, and were born almost front and back. Before they were born, Chen's mother and the original owner's mother didn't like each other because the Chen family wanted to expand the yard and occupy the land shared by the two families. The original owner's mother was not someone to be bullied, and she went to the countryside to fight over this matter, forcing the Chen family to give up expanding the yard, and the feud between the two families ended. After Chen's Lu and the original owner were born, the feud continued to the next generation. The original owner has good looks and good grades, and has always been good at showing favor to his family. But Chen's Lu is not so good. His appearance is mediocre and his grades are always ranked second by the original owner. The two of them go to one school in the village, one in the county, and one in the province. School, after being admitted to university, it is still the same school. Chen Lu was obsessed with competing with the original owner, but failed every time. His own light was completely obscured by the original owner, he thought. One can imagine how much he hated the original owner. When the original owner pursued Guo Junyuan, Chen Lu was encouraged to pursue her too. He didn't like Guo Junyuan, but just wanted to suppress the original owner, such as the person you like ended up being my girlfriend or something like that. As a result, he wanted to slap the original owner in the face, but he was slapped in the face by the original owner. Guo Junyuan agreed to the original owner's pursuit, and the original owner embraced the beauty. From then on, Chen Dailu's list of enemies not only had the original owner, but also added Guo Junyuan, who had bad taste. I have to say that with the original owner's temperament, he did not flirt with girls throughout college, and did not fall in love with Guo Junyuan even if he was itchy. Chen Lu has a lot to contribute. As the saying goes, the person who knows you best is your enemy. Chen Lu has been trying to compete with the original owner since he was a child, so he naturally knows what kind of peeper he is. Ever since the two announced their relationship, he has become more energetic. As soon as the original owner makes any move to get close to other girls, he will immediately go there. Report to Guo Junyuan. At that time, in addition to studying and school activities, Chen Dailu's other daily life was either trying to discredit the original owner, or walking on the road to discredit the original owner. His biggest goal from the beginning to the end was to ruin the reputation of the original owner, to step on him and get rid of all kinds of shadows from childhood to adulthood. As a result, everyone in the classmate circle felt that he did this because he liked Guo Junyuan too much, and he was eager to smear the original owner and take advantage of him. One believes in him. Later, after the original owner succeeded and revealed his true colors, even though Chen's Lu had been blocked by the original owner, he still came to visit happily to add friends, and also specially filled in the verification message. The content was almost like, I knew you were this kind of person, your true colors have been exposed, you trash. Guo Junyuan was able to discover the true identity of the original owner and see why her husband spent so much money buying all kinds of useless things, but Chen Dailu's tip-off was indispensable. Yes, Guo Junyuan deleted Chen's Lu as early as when she was in college, when she was always trying to smear her boyfriend. But Chen's Lu didn't mind at all. Every time, she put the intelligence she learned in the verification message, and then go and apply for friends. It doesn't matter whether Guo Junyuan adds him as a friend or not, as long as she sees the information. Since graduating from college, Chen Dailu has never given up doing this. Even if Guo Junyuan changes her account, he can still find a new account through their common classmates. With such persistence, it's no wonder that a group of people felt that he was passionately devoted to Guo Junyuan. Even Guo Junyuan herself felt that Chen Lu liked her too much. She even once felt sorry for the original owner because she had such a pursuer who was obsessed with smearing her boyfriend. But Chen Lu really only has one goal, and that is to let everyone see Ji Chang's true face. He wanted his mother, Ji Chang's mother, their common teacher from childhood to adulthood, and those highly myopic classmates who thought Ji Chang's had both good character and academics to be considerate of his girlfriend and never cross the line with other girls, to see clearly. He or Ji Chang's, who is the villain? After Ji Chang's finished recalling, he felt a little bit of admiration for Chen Lu. Being able to keep going for decades, even when you are 30, you still target the same person without giving up or abandoning as you did when you were 7 or 8 years old. Persistent enough. Seeing Fu Hao looking at him, he said, "Chen Lu, he has a grudge against me." No wonder. Fu Hao breathed a sigh of relief. He said why Chen Lu told Guo Junyuan that the man and Ji Chang's couldn't get along. It turned out to be a grudge. How can you take the comments of your enemies seriously? He said to Ji Chang's with some shared hatred, "This person always talks bad things about you, brother Ji," to Xiaobeo's mother. This person is really serious. At this time, it is hard for Xiaobeo's mother to take care of the child alone. It's a good thing that Xiaobeo is still young and doesn't understand these words to smear you like this, otherwise I wouldn't know how uncomfortable I would be. Ji Chang sighed decently, "Chen Lu is like this, I've long been used to it." Fu Hao saw him sighing and quickly comforted him, "Don't feel uncomfortable. You will know what kind of person you are as long as you have contact with him. His words will only lie to himself." Ji Chang's nodded, took out the key and opened the door, raising his eyebrows slightly. "Chen Lu, this name is particularly suitable for putting people in a pot. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man." Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 86. When he followed Ji Chang's into the house, Fu Hao was in a trance for a moment. He looked at the furnishings in the house, the PUKE sign on the table, and a bucket of instant noodles that he forgot to throw away after finishing the meal. There was a bag of dried sweet potatoes spread out, and I almost thought I was back before the meteorite rain. There are no wild beasts that suddenly rush out, no plants that treat humans like zombies, no crows flying around, and no sour smell caused by everyone gathering together without taking a shower for a long time. The room is fresh and refreshing, no matter how you look at it, it looks normal. His eye circles were slightly red, and he quickly forced himself to calm down, and sat on the sofa at Ji Chang's signal. Ji Chang's poured him a glass of mineral water. "Drink some water. I have nothing to entertain you. I still have some peanuts at home. I'll get them for you." "That's enough, that's enough." Fu Hao took a sip of mineral water and his eye circles became even redder. Someone in their group has found mineral water, but he may have been unlucky and has never found it. He drinks water directly from the river, boils it before drinking it, because it is not filtered, and when he drinks it, the water in his mouth you can also feel a strange smell. There was no way, this unfiltered water had the smell, so they had no choice but to tolerate it. It had only been a few days since he drank mineral water, but he felt as if he hadn't drank it for months or years, so he drank it with cherished sips. Ji Chang sat opposite him, untying the cloth from the spear and saying, "I didn't ask you in detail on the way. Is the gathering place where you are now far from here? Is there a road where I can drive?" "There is a road for driving, but it is too difficult to walk, and the grass grows too fast. If you drive, you have no vision and can't see clearly in front of you. It is easy to have an accident." Fu Hao carefully put down his cup and recalled, "It was also my first time to come to this area. I walked here while looking for things. I walked for almost 3.5 hours. I kept walking because I couldn't find anything useful. Originally, I walked here. I was planning to go back when I met you, otherwise it would be harder to walk in the dark." Ji Chang's nodded, found a pen and paper and handed it to him, asking him to draw a route map according to his memory. In the past, No one would have thought that it was only a 3.5 hour walk. He searched for 7 days but could not get there. Fu Hao had a short mouth for eating people, and he had witnessed Ji Chang's and Li Hechuan's fishing law enforcement against mutant plants before, so he was very obedient and immersed himself in painting. While he was drawing, he saw Ji Chang stand up, open the door and knock on the door on the other side. He could hear Ji Chang's talking to the young man named Li Hechuan. "I'm ready to leave here, do you want to come with me?" Li Hechuan was so shocked that he stuttered a bit when he spoke. "Li, leave? Didn't we take Auntie over?" Ji Chang's analyzed in a calm tone, "Now the city has been occupied by mutated plants and animals and is no longer suitable for human habitation. If you want to live in the countryside for a long time, you have to go to the countryside. Moreover, Junyuan and I's parents are still in the village. Why should we go there, around them?" Li Hechuan thought what he said made sense. "But uncle, we need a car if we want to go to the village. Your car is not suitable, and neither is my car. It disappeared into the grass and disappeared. We have to find a car." "Ji Chang's, I found 2 suitable cars yesterday and parked them in the garage of our community. If you are willing to go together, pack your own things and come back later to help me move my things." Li Hechuan: "As expected of you." Although he was still unsure whether to leave or stay, Li Hechuan still nodded and agreed, "Okay, I will discuss it with my parents." The result of the discussion was naturally to follow Ji Chang's. Although Li Hechuan has learned a lot in the past few days, if Ji Chang's leaves, it will be impossible for him to live with his parents in this isolated city. He is pretty good at computers and has good hands-on skills, but in a place like this where there is no power or signal, it is as useless as giving a baby chopsticks to pick up food. Ji Chang's is the thigh, hug. Must hug. So, after knocking on the door and running to tell Ji Chang's their family's choice, Li Hechuan followed Ji Chang's to the garage and looked at the 2 cars in front of him in stunned silence. A large RV that looks very expensive at first glance. One is very suitable for driving off-road in the wild. The owners either abandoned their cars and fled for their lives or were not in the car when the accident happened. Finding these 2 cars took a lot of effort from Ji Chang's. Li Hechuan was pleasantly surprised. The RV has a high visibility and is convenient for driving on the road, while the off-road vehicle is suitable for driving in the wilderness. Just perfect. After being happy for a while, he started to worry again. "It's no use having a car, we have no gas." 10 minutes later, Li Hechuan carried a bucket of gasoline downstairs and put it in the car with an expression that said, "That's fine." He is now 100% convinced that Ji Chang's belongs to the Bei clan. He even had gasoline prepared. Fu Hao finished drawing the route map and joined in the process of moving things. Ji Chang's house had a lot of stuff, and fortunately the RV had a lot of storage space. If it couldn't fit in the cabinet, he just put it on the bed. He was probably in the same mood as Li Hechuan now. He was carrying all kinds of magical tools, instruments, and a lot of weird and unrecognizable things, and he felt like shit in his heart. What does this brother Ji do? Special forces. On the 7th day of the apocalypse, Ji Chang's almost emptied the house, carefully placed the family's photo album on the passenger seat, and left the community. The RV opened the road, and the off-road vehicle followed. Li Hechuan drove the RV, Fu Hao drove the off-road vehicle, and Ji Chang sat on the roof of the RV, holding a telescope in one hand to see if there was any danger ahead and whether he could walk ahead. If there were any mutant plants or animal, he picked up the NU arrow on the side and shot it directly. Then when the car in front of you stops, let him pick up the NU arrows. Unless he finds an arsenal these days, it would be better to use less arrows than to cherish them. So, the 2 cars stopped along the way, and Ji Chang's went down from time to time to collect some strange plant liquids and edible animal carcasses. Anyway, nothing is wasted. Because driving requires clearing roads and there are various parking lots along the way, Even though they were driving, they walked even slower than Fu Hao walked. The 3.5-hour walk ended up taking nearly 5 hours. It was getting dark, so Ji Chang's pulled down the iron basin he had placed on both sides of the car and lit a fire on it. The animals around him were afraid of fire and did not dare to provoke. At the same time, on the first floor of the office building where Fu Hao and the others gathered, his wife gently patted the child who was sleeping peacefully in adult clothes, and stood up uneasily to look outside. Guo Junyuan carefully fed the baby in her arms and drank the rice soup. She saw him frowning, obviously not very satisfied with what he drank, but because he was hungry, he could only drink it in one sip, with a smile on his face. Feeling distressed. She only hated why she had weaned herself so early. Now that all the milk powder she had brought out had been finished, and Xiaobao couldn't go hungry, Guo Junyuan could only feed him rice soup. He was used to drinking milk powder, but he was still not used to the taste of rice soup. He refused to drink it. He was only willing to drink it when he was hungry and couldn't stand it. Can a mother not feel distressed when her child endures hardship? After waiting for Xiaobao to finish eating, Guo Junyuan carefully coaxed him to fall asleep with his little brows furrowed and an uncomfortable look on his face. She carefully placed him on the thick bedding made of clothes, covered him with clothes, and then he limped. He stood up limpingly. He comforted Fu Hao's wife, "Don't worry. Fu Hao has always been cautious and measured. Nothing will happen. He may be on his way back now." Zhang Shengshen nodded uneasily, "Yes, when Fu Hao went out this morning, he told me that the area was searched all over. He wanted to go farther today, but he may have accidentally gone too far." Although the two of them said this, they actually had the heaviest answer in their hearts. From the time they gathered together until now, if someone doesn't come back after dark, that person will never come back. After all, people don't have night vision, and they are short of resources. It would be nice to have a lighter, let alone a flashlight. Now the outside is like a forest and grassland, with dangerous plants and animals everywhere, and people can still hide for a while during the day. Hide, but at night, people can't see and can't tell where they are. In the end, they either get lost or become prey to these terrible animals and plants. Fu Hao hasn't come back yet, and there's a high chance he won't come back again. Zhang Shengshen knew this, but she didn't want to believe it. She didn't know how she could accept the bad news about her husband, and she didn't know if she could take care of their children after losing her husband. She could only look forward to it with meager hope. "I hope Fu Hao can come back in good condition." She forced herself to look away from the outside, looked at Guo Junyuan next to her under the firelight, and asked with concern, "Is your leg okay?" Guo Junyuan looked down at the hideous wound on her right leg and shook her head silently. She was injured when she went out to look for food today. It was a vine. It learned square dancing without any teacher. When Guo Junyuan passed by, it suddenly jumped up from the ground and danced wildly. The wound was forced out. When Guo Junyuan limped back and picked up her child, what she was thinking about in her heart was not how much it hurt, but how she could go out and find food to feed Xiaobao and herself because she was injured now and it was difficult to even walk. Although Guo Junyuan didn't say it was any big deal, Zhang Shengshen was not blind either. She sighed, "Your wound needs stitches. It's still bleeding after such a long time." It hurt her to look at it, and she didn't know how Guo Junyuan could hold back the pain without even saying a word of pain since she came back. But even if Guo Junyuan didn't cry out in pain, her pale face had given her away. The two were talking when Chen Lu suddenly appeared behind them. He glanced at Guo Junyuan's wound and sighed pretentiously, "Junyuan, I said before that Ji Chang's is unreliable. Look, now you are the only one taking care of the child. If you are injured, no one can take care of you. Look at Fu Hao, this is a good man. I told you at the beginning that you made the wrong choice. Over the years, I have tried so hard to tell you who Ji Chang's is. If you had listened to me before, you would be married and have a husband now. It won't hurt if you help me. Guo Junyuan ignored Chen's Lu, but spoke loudly, and glanced at Chen's Lu with some dissatisfaction. What sarcastic remarks did you make? What happened to the couple is their business. The baby's mother was injured, and you came here to add fuel to the fire. Besides, the meteorite rain happened so suddenly. Who can blame the baby's mother and her husband for not being together? One good thing about Guo Junyuan is that she never speaks ill of anyone, especially when this man is her son's father. Zhang Shengsheng, who had just met her, naturally didn't know that Guo Junyuan planned to divorce Ji Chang's. She only knew part of the story from someone who was traveling with Chen Lu and was also a classmate of Chen Lu and Guo Junyuan, such as the fact that Chen Lu was not allowed to court Ji Chang's because of this, so she frantically smeared Ji Chang's. Because Guo Junyuan never denied it, Zhang Shengsheng also knew that he probably wasn't lying. But now, when Guo Junyuan was just injured and was feeling uncomfortable, he came over to make sarcastic remarks, which was simply unbearable. Chen Delu was told this, and he looked a little embarrassed and defended himself, who said, I came here to make sarcastic remarks. This is a normal conversation between classmates, and I'm not here specifically to talk. I'm here to deliver something. He handed the roll of gauze directly to Guo Junyuan, and threw it directly into her hand under her surprised gaze. I found this when I went out to look for food before. I have no use for this thing. You have such a wound, the blood is oozing out. Please use this gauze to bandage it to stop the bleeding and prevent further infection. Guo Junyuan looked at him with a somewhat complicated expression, not because she was moved, but because she didn't expect Chen Delu, who had always been aggressive and annoying, to be willing to help at this time. She didn't refuse, held the gauze and whispered, thank you. You're welcome. After all, you were also deceived by Ji Chang's. If you had listened to me, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Chen's Lu Jian Zhang Shengsheng looked at him speechlessly and sneered, what you just said makes sense, but I'm not afraid to tell you. Based on my understanding of Ji Chang's, even today he is with his wife and children. Yes, he will never be willing to go out to find food alone like your husband, and Jun Yuan was not outside with her husband when the accident happened, but Ji Chang's will never come out to find her. He asserted, he is as timid as a mouse. If he were at home and still alive, he would definitely hide in the house and dare not go out. He would rather be alone without contact for a lifetime and not dare to go out, let alone come looking for him. Jun Yuan. After finishing speaking, Chen's Lu did not forget to add the sentence that has almost become his mantra, I told you a long time ago that Ji Chang's is unreliable. Less than 3 seconds after saying this, there was light coming from outside and the sound of a car driving here. This was the first time a group of people heard the sound of a car after they settled in this place. Almost everyone, sleeping, eating, and chatting, was attracted by the sound of the car and stood up to look outside. Is there a car coming? Is it the army? The army is here to save us, right? Almost everyone's attention was attracted, and naturally the three of them also glanced at each other. Then he saw 2 cars approaching one after another. The door of the off-road vehicle opened first. Fu Hao ran out of the car. Seeing his wife, who had burst into tears when he saw him for the first time, he hurriedly ran away. Come over. Don't worry, there's an unexpected situation, so I'll be late. He comforted his wife and said to Guo Junyuan with a smile, Mom, your husband is here too. He has been looking for you. When he met me, he came with me. Chen's Lu. What the hell? Can't. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 87. Chen Lu looked at the 2 cars with an expression that said, this is absolutely impossible. Under the firelight, Ji Chang's climbed down from the roof of the RV and waved to the side. Chen Lu was not the only one who couldn't believe it, Guo Junyuan was also the same. From the rain of meteorites to the crazy growth of plants and finally to the current difficult survival, it is so hard to take care of the child alone. Guo Junyuan has not thought about returning home to seek help from the child's father. After all, she is a woman, and no matter how strong her character is, her physical fitness is still much worse than that of men. Whether she is going out to find food or avoid predators, she must be 100 times more careful than others. She couldn't afford the gamble. Xiaobao is the only one with her. If something happens to her, now that everyone is in danger, what will happen to a useless baby who only eats, drinks, breathes, and cries? She never hesitates to think about the worst. But Guo Junyuan was not sure whether Ji Chang's would be willing to help. She was happy when she was in college, and the same was true when she was newlywed, but during this time she really couldn't deceive herself anymore. Ji Chang's began to stay up at night. From coming home late at first, to not going home until the next day, to finally not going home at all. Guo Junyuan didn't believe Ji Chang's words that he joined the Yubei clan. It's simply not his character to engage in such a thing. And even if you join the Yub tribe, you don't have to spend so much money to buy so many things that you don't need right now, right? Guo Junyuan was broken down and desperate at first, troubled by her husband's unscrupulous squandering of family property, but soon, with Chen Dailu's prompting, she saw the truth. From the beginning, there was no such thing as joining the Bei tribe. Ji Chang's was simply transferring property. He wants a divorce, Guo Junyuan is sure of this. Her best way to retaliate would be to find a lawyer immediately, find evidence of Ji Chang's cheating, take him to court, and then ask for a divorce. But after thinking for a long time, she gave up on this path. After all, they had really liked each other, supported each other, and they had a child. She didn't want it to be so ugly. Since Ji Chang's wants to divide it, let's divide it. The two of them bought the house together, and she deserved half of it, so she treated it like thanking him for giving her a little treasure. When she left disheartened, she actually still had some hope in her heart. She hoped that when she filed for divorce, the man who had always kept himself in the room would come out and coax her, just like he did when they were in love. But no, nothing. Ji Chang's remained silent in the room where he left the mess. He didn't hold back, didn't dissuade, and didn't even say a promise. For the first time, Guo Junyuan felt that she couldn't see him clearly. His cold-blooded treatment of her and Xiaobao frightened her. She even had a feeling that even if she found Ji Chang's with Xiaobao, the man would still be indifferent. Maybe it was true, as Chen Lu said, that Ji Chang's was not who she saw at all. In the past few days, Guo Junyuan secretly covered her face and cried silently several times at night after everyone fell asleep. The next day she wiped her eyes and looked strong as if nothing had happened. But if you can have someone to rely on, who wants to have your teeth knocked out and blood swallowed? And now, when she had given up on him, Ji Chang's came to find her. His expression was still the same as before. He walked to her quite normally, frowned at the hideous wound on her leg, and said in a hasty tone, "How did you do it?" Guo Junyuan didn't know why he could act like nothing happened after the two of them broke up. She heard herself reply, "I was beaten by a vine." Ji Chang's knelt on the ground, frowning on his fair face, and stared at her wound with a serious look for a few seconds. Does the vine have gray-green leaves and swing around like an electric shock, but it won't entangle people? Guo Junyuan nodded, yes. The blood will continue to bleed after being drawn by this vine, and the wound needs to be sutured. Ji Chang's came to a conclusion, turned to Li Hechuan who was helping his parents out of the car and said, Chuan, give me the anesthetic and my number 3 bring the medicine box." Hey, Li Hechuan watched his parents stand firm and hurriedly ran to the RV to find what Ji Chang's wanted. After Ji Chang's finished speaking, he didn't waste any time and directly picked up Guo Junyuan and strode inside. He locked the sleeping baby's position, held Guo Junyuan and carefully placed her on the ground, and took the time to touch his son's face. Then he raised his head and looked at Guo Junyuan. You have worked hard these days, taking Xiaobao alone. Guo Junyuan was still a little confused. She suspected that she was dreaming. Otherwise, how could Ji Chang's tell her how hard it was so casually? Her mind was still confused, but her body was aware of it first. Her eye circles were red, and tears fell uncontrollably. The discomfort, pain, and despair of the past few days have all turned into grievances at this moment, and the tears are falling down, and I can't control them. Li Hechuan bumped up to the two of them carrying a medicine box and a bottle of anesthetic, placed the things in front of Ji Chang's, and gave Guo Junyuan a flattering smile on his plump face. Hello, Aunt. Guo Junyuan woke up from a dream when he called her like that. She quickly raised her hand to wipe her tears and looked down at Ji Chang's, who was opening the medicine box, taking out a syringe from the neatly arranged tools, and unpacking it. Ji Chang's inhaled an appropriate amount of anesthetic from the bottle, and used alcohol cotton to disinfect the area around Guo Junyuan's wound. The stitches are too painful. I'll give you a local anesthetic. It may hurt a little during the injection, so bear with it. After saying that, he quickly inserted the needle and slowly pushed the anesthetic inside. Guo Junyuan didn't even react. He had already finished the injection. The severe pain that had always existed in her legs disappeared and turned into unconsciousness. Facing Ji Chang's, who asked if she could still feel the pain in her legs, Guo Junyuan shook her head silently. Then he watched Ji Chang's quickly take out the needle and thread, put on surgical gloves, disinfect the wound, and sew stitches. A series of movements that are extremely skillful and natural. But Ji Chang's was not a medical student and had no medical experience. She had lived with him for so long and never knew he could do this. Next to him, Li Hechuan was still seizing the time to blow a rainbow fart. Don't worry, Auntie, I'm very good at stitching, it won't hurt at all, and he's very meticulous, so there won't be any scars on your legs. As he spoke, he opened his sleeve and showed Guo Junyuan the wound on his hand. Look, this is where I was injured 5 days ago, and it's also where my uncle gave me the stitches. Look, it's only been a few days. Guo Junyuan glanced at Ji Chang's and said hoarsely, I've been married to you for so long, and I didn't even know you could do stitches. Ji Chang's threaded the thread steadily. I'm new to this. I wanted to show it to you before, but didn't you get angry when you saw the things I bought? I didn't do it. Li Hechuan nodded repeatedly from the side. Yes, don't you have a tribe? They can learn all these things, such as horseback riding, archery, watching celestial battles, stealth techniques, and survival in the wild. Not to mention stitches. Guo Junyuan didn't know what to say. There are tribesmen. Isn't this Ji Chang's excuse for divorce? Listen to him, it's just an excuse to have a Bei clan. Chen Lu saw that since Ji Chang's came in, the eyes of everyone in the room fell on him again, without any regard for him, and he felt angry in his heart. That's it again. Growing up, as long as Ji Chang's was there, Chen Lu would not be there. Every time Ji Chang's appears, he acts like a transparent person. Chen Lu simply ignored the fact that everyone was shocked by Ji Chang's operation, driving a RV to get professional anesthesia stitches, and walked in with a sneer. He and I grew up together, and what did I not know about him? He is definitely not the kind of person who is willing to prepare for an impossible disaster. Ji Chang's took the scissors and carefully cut off the thread, and looked up at Chen Lu. There can't be a disaster? Then why are we here now? Chen Dai Lu. He was speechless. He took a deep breath and regained his composure. Ji Chang's, stop pretending. Don't I know what kind of person you are? Do you have a tribe? Hey, that's just an excuse for you to transfer your property. Jun Yuan, I'm telling you, you can't believe him. He's such a cold person. How could he come back to find you? With his temperament, he would definitely hide in this situation and his parents wouldn't care. Li Hechuan was the first to be angry for his uncle. Why are you so slanderous? I know best what my uncle is like. He is very powerful. Other Bei people are not as powerful as him. The disdain in the eyes of Chen Dailu, an older middle school student, was almost reaching the sky. Don't be blind. Don't I still know what the prepared people are like? Ji Chang's is just pretending to be prepared. He is prepared for everything, from toothpicks to generators. He is prepared. The most important thing for a tribe is one's body consciousness, and then equipment. Chen Lu is full of confidence. When he first learned that Ji Chang's had become a Yubei tribe, although it was the first time he heard the word, he still left and started searching Baidu to find out what the Yubei tribe meant and what the Yubei tribe did, and then started to inquire about what Ji Chang's had done. After a comprehensive analysis, we came to the rigorous answer that Ji Chang's was using the name of the Bei clan as an excuse. Laugh. This garbage can't fool him. Half an hour later. Gurgling, gurgling, gurgling. Chen's dead eyes were sitting in his seat. The aroma of hot pot surrounded him. Right in front, Ji Chang's was using solar power panels to generate electricity. There was an induction cooker in front of him, with a small pot on it. Hot pot was cooking in it, and it was bubbling as the heat continued. Next to him, he used the water purified by the water purifier to make milk powder for his son. He handed the bottle to the baby's two chubby hands and held it carefully to see that he couldn't wait to start drinking. Although he had almost eaten, his right hand he picked up a piece of meat with his chopsticks, chewed it a few times and swallowed it, with a look of satisfaction on his face. Ji Chang's solar power generation panels are easier to use than generators. Chen Dailu. When Ji Chang's was full, he opened the bag and took out the compressed bedding, opened it, popped it out, and laid it out. She carefully laid out the sheets and made a 4-piece set, then placed her well-fed son on the small pillow in the middle, took out the incense and lit it aside, turned to Chen Lu and smiled, Jun Yuan, get used to it. Sleep well. Chen Dailu, who was sitting on the withered grass and holding a coat as a quilt. He thought this was the limit. Until Ji Chang slowly took out a toothpick to pick his teeth. She also specifically targeted him in this direction. Chen Dailu. Grass. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 88. Ever since Ji Chang's arrived on the first floor of this building, he has been the focus of everyone inside. After all, it is the 7th day of the end of the world, and almost all of them are sour and smelly. Even those who are originally fair can get a tan after going out to find food in the sun for these days, plus the mess. With their hair and tattered clothes, and their spirits due to lack of food and sleep, they all looked like those who had fled. Everyone is like this, no one should dislike anyone. As a result, Ji Chang's came at this time. Not to mention how cool the two cars he drove were. The flames hanging on both sides of the car looked like they were filming a TV series. Look at his body, he is white and clean, and there is no sign of being devastated by the apocalypse. Moreover, as soon as he comes, just start sewing. Compared with them, the gap is as big as heaven and earth. Because Ji Chang's has been busy since he got off the car, first stitching, then playing with tools to cook hot pot, eating hot pot and feeding the child. Now that he is full and flossing his teeth, he is holding the child to sleep, and those people don't dare to come forward. Disturb him. After all, everyone is not a fool. Ji Chang's can still live so comfortably under such circumstances. Moreover, looking at that chubby young man, his words of pleasing are almost written on his face, so he is definitely a ruthless character. People are coaxing their children, and they come up to disturb them. What if they almost miss the trap and make the other person angry instead? I want to ask Li Hechuan about it. He is also busy setting up a tent and making beds for his parents. The two elders are not old, but they are not young either. The car was bumping along the way as if it was going to the sky. The two of them are no better than young people, and they are not in good spirits. They are holding a bowl of egg noodles and eating happily. Li Hechuan was focused on letting his parents rest early, and did not pay attention to what the people around him thought of him. He was busy setting up a tent. His parents were too old to withstand the wind, so he specially used the supplies he distributed, switched tents with Ji Chang's, while mumbling to his parents so that the two elders would not fall asleep without dinner. "Can I add some jerky for you? I just brought a bottle. You don't want the dried meat? Hey, where did this pillowcase go? I found it. I found it, water. It's here. I'll try to see if it's hot. Yes, it's hot. Drink it." Before the end of the world, Li Hechuan was actually not very keen on doing trivial things, let alone such things as asking his parents to drink water before he tested the water temperature himself. In fact, he is the stinking young man of today. Because he is engaged in the freelance industry, he stays up late every night. He sleeps until noon and then is woken up by his parents for breakfast and lunch. When eating, he still sets up a bed table on the bed and finishes the bowl. My parents take care of the chopsticks. In the afternoon, I unhurriedly curled up in bed to work/play with mobile phone/play games/chat. Then I continued to eat dinner in bed. After eating, I continued to curl up in bed to do various activities that can be done with mobile phones and computers. Not to mention doing something for the family at the end of the day. There are no dishes to wash. Sometimes when I want to drink water but there is no water in the cup, I just say Mom or Dad. He had just graduated not long ago, and even though he was in his 20s, he was still a child in the eyes of his parents, who still spoiled him. Otherwise, he would not have been able to work full-time and successfully raise himself to be so fat and white. But after the end of the world, Li Hechuan's mentality changed. It is no exaggeration to say that he just wanted to hold his old man and his old lady in his hand, carry it in his pocket and carry it with him wherever he went. This is not before the end of the world. At that time, if you were sick, you could take medicine and an injection and be cured in a few days. If I get sick now, not to mention illness, even if there is a cut, there is no room for tetanus. Besides, in the past, the family drank bottled water and ate clean rice. The meat was farmed and the vegetables were bought fresh. Now even if he hugs Uncle G, his thighs are definitely not as good as before the apocalypse in all aspects. The immunity of older people is definitely not as good as that of young people. It is very likely that they will get sick if they don't handle the food properly. If they get sick, there is no way to cure it. Could Li Hechuan be careless? His father had finished eating and wanted to help. Li Hechuan quickly held him down. "Farewell, Dad, I'll make it right away. Can you have some more noodle soup? I seasoned it, it's very fragrant. Let's drink another bowl to warm your stomach. I can sleep well at night." As he spoke, fearing that his own father would not agree, he quickly took the bowl and chopsticks from the other person's hand and filled him with a bowl of noodle soup. Li Hechuan did this action naturally, completely unaware of the envy in the eyes of the people around them when they looked at them. They have been short of water and food these days, and now there are jungles everywhere. It would be good to find something to eat, not to mention the seasonings. Therefore, the aroma of Li Hechuan's noodle soup is so rich that it explodes for them. A group of people swallowed their saliva, watching Li Hechuan continue to be busy, and they were too embarrassed to ask. Look at Ji Chang's again. While still coaxing the child, he actually took out a rattle from his bag. This is not a great escape from the apocalypse. It is simply a trip out for sightseeing. The more Ji Chang's behaves like this, the more some people want to get close to him, and it is best to get into his car with them. There is a car and supplies. What a golden thigh, but these people are not shameless. After all, Ji Chang's is a new stranger and it is difficult to open his mouth. Someone is eyeing Chen Lu. After all, Chen Lu was the one who had been living with them for a few days. They all had a good relationship with each other. He also knew Ji Chang's. Although it seemed that there was some trouble between the two of them, Chen Lu didn't say that he was with Ji Chang's before. Growing up, if you tell him about the background and personality of this person who looks very cool at first glance, you will definitely not come back empty-handed. Of course, they had to hide a little bit when they were talking. Don't let the great God see them talking to his enemy. I went out to solve some personal physiological problems. After I was done, I was blocked and asked Ji Chang's Chen Dai Lu. He almost cursed. This guy must be crazy. If you want to know what kind of character Ji Chang's is like and what he likes, ask him. Just ask him. What? Now he is not only invisible when Ji Chang's exists, but he has also evolved into Ji Chang's mouthpiece, right? If he doesn't cooperate, he won't cooperate no matter what. Let him tell these people what Ji Chang's likes. Go ahead and dream. Chen Lu's ideas are really firm. The person who came to ask him took out 2 loaves of bread in exchange. Chen Dai Lu. Forget it, he doesn't care about these stupid people. After collecting the bread, he thought about it and felt that he had to start from the beginning. Ji Chang's character can be seen from the time he was 5 years old. He is very thoughtful at a young age. He likes to look at beautiful girls since he was a child, and he doesn't even blink when he is in college. I'm in a relationship. On the surface, I'm with my girlfriend Enai, but behind the scenes, I hit on a girl. I saw it with my own eyes, but they still don't believe it. He's a very simple person. As long as he has good looks and a good figure, it doesn't matter. A passerby can make his city gate fall. The person who took out the bread nodded with a clear face. He was also a man, and of course he knew that most men couldn't stand temptation. Then Chen Lu said, he ##yuan %. Ji Chang's yuan #yuan. In short, this person is very yuan /U0026 *. Don't be fooled by his appearance, he #***. The more Chen Lu talked, the more excited he became, and the more he talked, the more comfortable he felt. It had been a long time since he had met someone who was willing to listen to him complain about Ji Chang's. Ji Chang's, this trash, pretends to be decent. Their classmates and friends who know each other think that he is trying to smear each other. It is impossible for him to directly drag people who don't know Ji Chang's. Beep, finally caught Guo Junyuan, but the other party still hasn't how to deal with him. Now that he had such a rare opportunity, he couldn't stop talking once he started talking. He kept beeping Ji Chang's basketful of shortcomings with full pleasure for almost half an hour before Chen Lu finally stopped with satisfaction under the urging of his bladder. To summarize these words briefly, Ji Chang's is a lustful, timid, pretentious, and likes to be flattered by others. Finally, I did not forget to add, before the end of the world, his wife saw his true face and prepared to divorce him. This is all my credit. Ji Chang's used the family assets and how much of the joint property of the couple is left. I helped her find it. Although Guo Junyuan didn't ask for his help. If I hadn't let down my guard all the time and insisted on telling his wife that he was drinking, smoking, and playing with women outside, and staying away from home for 3 days to chase a little sister who was still in school, the little girl wouldn't pay attention to him, and how bothered he was. He's so good. He's so seductive that his wife won't be able to see him clearly. Speaking of this, Chen Lu was very proud. I was proud for a few seconds and then fell into despair. It's a pity, it's the end of the world, and this marriage is probably not divorced. Mothers will always endure it for the sake of their children. Even if Ji Chang's is a scumbag, Guo Junyuan might be able to endure it. Almost 99.99% of what he said was filled with personal emotions. Thanks to the patience of the man who asked him for information, he really listened to it honestly. After this man returned, he took his sister and started discussing it in whispers. This sister also has no sense of morality. She has really had enough hard times these days. In addition, she had a lot of fun before the end of the world and didn't care much about it. Ji Chang's has "I am super rich" written all over his body. "I will never endure hardship with you," he nodded and agreed without any hesitation. She quietly looked in the direction of the couple by the firelight, and saw Guo Junyuan with her back to Ji Chang's, motionless as if she was asleep. Ji Chang's had already put the child to sleep and had put him on the mattress. She looked over at that time, he was gently covering her with a small quilt. What a gentle and good father. If she can get pregnant after hooking up with him, even if Zhu Huang is old or Ji Chang's has a new man, he will take care of her for the sake of the child. It was the end of the world anyway, so she just wanted to have enough food and clothing, and moral integrity was not important. Seeing Ji Chang's making sure that the child was asleep, he stood up, told Li Hechuan something and then turned and walked outside. The younger sister glanced at her brother, got an encouraging look and got up, and followed him confidently. Past. As soon as Ji Chang's walked away, Guo Junyuan, who had been pretending to sleep, opened her eyes. She sat up, looked at her son next to her who was sleeping peacefully because of the familiar milk powder, and asked Li Hechuan next to her, "What did he do?" "I left the hand warmer in the car." "Uncle, go get it." Li Hechuan had just settled his parents down and came over very attentively. "Auntie, I haven't eaten enough just now, and I plan to have dinner next time. How about you? The noodles I made are quite delicious." Guo Junyuan glanced at her son hesitantly, and finally asked Li Hechuan to help her look after the child. She stood up and walked outside. Since their reunion, Ji Chang's has behaved as if nothing had happened. Guo Junyuan felt that they should talk. As soon as she went out, she saw Ji Chang's running back a lot as if he were avoiding some ferocious beast, looking at the girl in cool clothes opposite with a wary face. "What are you doing? Let's talk about it, don't do it." The girl who was unbuttoning her shirt and planning to engage in ultimate temptation said, "Brother Ji, I just want to help you warm up. I have hand warmers, I don't need you." Ji Chang's frowned, with a look of disgust on his face. "Girl, if your ears and eyes are good, you should know that I have a wife and children. If you want to do this, you have found the wrong person." "Girl." Didn't her brother say that Ji Chang's colleagues said he was very simple and would accept anyone who came with good looks and a good figure? Having made it this far, she thought it might be Ji Chang's who was holding it. If the mountain didn't come, it would be me, and she would be the one. "Girl, but..." Ji Chang's made a stopping gesture. "No buts, goodbye." It was really a simple and rude rejection. There is not even a slight chance for people to climb along the pole. "Girl." She has neither moral integrity nor shamelessness. She only does it if you want her to do it. This kind of person is not happy at all, so she definitely can't do it in a hurry. She shook her hands angrily, buttoned up, and turned around to leave. Guo Junyuan never expected to see such a scene. When she saw her coming, she subconsciously hid behind the door. It was dark and there was no flashlight, so the young girl did not see her. She walked in angrily. Her brother saw her coming back and hurriedly he came up to us and asked expectantly, "How is it? Is it done?" "No, he is a gentleman, and he doesn't give him any chance. I even washed my face with water, but it was all wasted." "Brother, Chen Lu is a liar. We have to get the bread back. Also, they say, they have wife and children. It's not like Chen Lu said that his relationship with his wife is just for the sake of the children." Her brother was confused. "No way. Chen Lu said that he and the guy outside grew up together, and he also said that they were going to divorce before." The girl paused. "I remember you told me before that Chen Lu said it was because he tipped off Ji Chang's and his wife that they divorced, right?" Her brother nodded. "Girl, Ji Chang's is definitely not that kind of person. I have met so many people. I can tell at a glance whether a man is really serious or not. Some men will stay even if they can't have sex for various reasons. I can continue to do it later, but the man outside is eager to put a garbage bag on me and throw it into the trash can. He doesn't give me a chance. He is definitely not like what Chen Lu said. But what he said was very true. He also said that his wife was going to divorce him because of this. I think this is true. You see, Guo Junyuan doesn't mention him much. Every day someone comes and says that your husband is a playboy who never refuses anyone. Can his wife not want a divorce? If it were me, I would divorce her. And brother, do you still remember that Chen Lu said that he had pursued her before? Guo Junyuan, I think he is just talking nonsense for Guo Junyuan. Her brother, so it was Chen Lu who stirred up their divorce, just to get them divorced so that he could gain leverage. Damn it, this person is even more shameless than me. 9 times out of 10, that's the case. No, we have to get the bread back. I've been humiliated today, so I can't take advantage of this guy. The two reached a consensus and went to find Chen Lu angrily. Guo Junyuan, who was hiding behind the door, fell into deep thought. It seems, every time she knows that Ji Chang's is out having fun or chasing girls, it is indeed a letter from Chen Lu. Over there, Chen's Lu Zheng happily picked out 2 loaves of bread. Just as he was wondering whether he should eat the original bagged bag or the original bagged bag, the brother and sister suddenly appeared and snatched away the 2 bags of bread in front of him. You must be sick. Tell us the truth about what you made up. It makes my sister feel so humiliated. You just want to fall in love with someone else's wife. You even threw dirt on Ji Chang's in order to get the beauty back. You just made it up so true, you just fabricated a fault out of thin air. How can you say that a gentleman is so shameless? Give me back the bread. I will definitely beat you up if you lie to us again. Chen Dailu, who was still holding the bread, was scolded with a blank look on his face. Then he watched the 2 people leave with a blank look on his face. Is he fabricating it? Is he making up lies? Ji Chang's is a gentleman? Ha! You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhonmao. Chapter 89. Chen Lu was confused here, while Guo Junyuan stood hesitantly for a while, then came out from where she was hiding and walked towards Ji Chang's. She had always been sure that Ji Chang's had cheated on her. After all, during that period, he stayed up all night, became impatient, and finally told her lies and bought a bunch of them with his family's money. It's a mess, these things are still vivid in my mind. If the apocalypse hadn't come, Guo Junyuan would have divorced him at this moment and live alone with Xiaobao. She never expected that things would develop like this. Like the plot of a science fiction novel, the apocalypse is coming. Ji Chang's, who was once convinced that he was a scumbag, righteously refused to bring a beautiful young girl to his door. When she was most helpless, he came to suture her wounds. She was lying on the side just now, watching Ji Chang's holding Xiaobao and coaxing him softly. No matter how he looked like a good father. All this overturned Guo Junyuan's cognition. She was serious in nature. Since what she had always believed in her heart seemed to have reversed, she must ask again. Ji Chang sent the young girl away and turned around to continue rummaging in the car. Guo Junyuan came over at this time. She looked at the familiar figure in front of her, took a breath, and asked, "Didn't we already negotiate a divorce?" The person in front of him held a hand warmer in his left and right hands, and turned to look at her with a confused expression. Divorce? What divorce? Even before she asked, Guo Junyuan had imagined countless answers that Ji Chang's might give, but she never expected that he would give this reaction. She was a little confused for a moment. After a while, I regained my original thinking. Didn't we already negotiate a divorce before the apocalypse happened? You agreed to it on the day the meteorite rain fell. Ji Chang's expression looked very confused. He blinked slowly, pretending to be at a loss as if he didn't know anything. Even his tone was 100% innocent. When did we negotiate for divorce? I was in the reserve room all day that day, and I didn't even think about it. Spoke to you. Guo Junyuan, I said this to you in the living room, didn't you acquiesce? At this moment, she had realized what had happened. She looked at her husband with some doubts and testing, and asked, didn't you hear? Ji Chang shook his head, and then said with a look of realization on his face, I was packing up my supplies that day while listening to music on my headphones. When a meteorite fell outside, the building started to shake. When I opened the door and went out, you were gone. I thought you were just right. Went out with Xiaobao. Guo Junyuan. She asked again, didn't you hear what I said? You didn't pay attention to the clothes I packed away and Xiaobao's baby bottles, toys, and clothes? Ji Chang's, I paid attention. I wanted to call you and ask you what happened, but the signal was cut off at that time, so I had to put it down for now. Wait, you mean you want to divorce me? Why? Why should we divorce if we are doing well? Guo Junyuan. She looked at Ji Chang's, whose face was full of question marks, and felt a rush of emotions running through her heart. While running, he also screamed. During the past 7 days, she had been busy looking for food and supplies to take care of her children during the day, and put her children to sleep at night. When she closed her eyes, she would repeat the past with Ji Chang's over and over again in her mind. The two met, fell in love, got married, had children, and finally divorced. What she recalled the most was the suffocating silence when she filed for divorce with despair and a glimmer of hope that Ji Chang's could refuse the divorce and explain it properly. When she still hoped that this marriage could be saved, Ji Chang's silence was no less than a heavy blow to her. She recalled the scene over and over uncontrollably. Guo Junyuan participated in the decoration of this house, so she knew very well how soundproof the room was and made sure that her voice could be transmitted into the room through the closed door. But she never expected that the sound came through. But Ji Chang's actually wore headphones. If Ji Chang's didn't hear those words, then she has been suffering from the other party's unresponsiveness and lack of response to the marriage in the past few days. She has been stuck in replaying the scene again and again. In fact, she is feeling sad for herself? Guo Junyuan, this is really sad. Ji Chang's was still asking innocently, what happened? Why did you divorce me? Did I do something wrong? Or do you think I haven't been with you at home these days? I'm not with you. Did you say that I have a plan for training? And I really have nothing to do with the women outside. When those women come to me, my eyelashes don't even flutter. Junyuan. Don't ignore me. What do you mean? Let's make it clear, now is the time for the family to spend time together, Junyuan. Wait a minute. Guo Junyuan heard everything Ji Chang said clearly, but the amount of information was too large for her to digest at the moment. She took out her hand and made a gesture to stop talking. She waited for Ji Chang's to calm down and then took a deep breath. You mean you didn't hear what I said at all? Ji Chang's nodded. Then you won't go home for those days. I am doing training for the Bay people. The first thing that the Bay people value is not materials but their own body awareness and skills. These must be trained by themselves. There is a little girl in your team who is going to college. I heard from Chenzlu that you like her? How many times have you followed their college to pick her up? Ji Chang's clapped his hands. She is much younger than me, and she has someone she likes, which is the president of the club I join. I go to school because the club is in the school, and I have nothing to do with her, and even if I am out. Gui, how old is she? I can't fall in love with such a yellow-haired girl. Do you believe what Chen Lu said? Have you forgotten how he slandered me when we were in college? How could the bad things he said about me be true? Thanks to Chen Lu for the glorious history. Guo Junyuan, who was still dubious before, heard the last sentence, and her original belief of 50% suddenly increased to 80%. There is no way, Chen Lu has a criminal record. She didn't believe it before and always believed that seeing is believing. But when she really saw it and felt Ji Chang's perfunctory and impatience with her, she started to believe it even if she didn't believe it. As a result, what Ji Chang said was reasonable and well-founded, and besides the fact that he had indeed rejected a young and beautiful girl just a few minutes ago, Guo Junyuan's expression gradually relaxed. You really didn't lie to me. Why did I lie to you, Junyuan? Don't you still know what kind of person I am from the time we met? If I really cheated on you and wanted to divorce you, why would I come out to find you and Xiaobao? Ji Chang's had "I was definitely wronged" written all over his face. If you don't believe me, ask Chuan Chuan. Everyone in their family knows that I have been looking for you. Guo Junyuan hesitated for a few seconds. Yes. Ji Chang's is right. If he was really that kind of person, why would he come out to find them? Now the law is gone, supplies are gone, mutated plants and animals are everywhere, and men have better physical strength than women. Even if it is for the sake of the child, there is no need for him to lie to her, he can just take the child and leave. Moreover, Ji Chang's appearance really has nothing to do with Guo Junyuan. Although she is good-looking, in this world, there are many girls like that young girl from before who are willing to recommend themselves as pillow mats. If Ji Chang's really wants it, there will definitely be no shortage of people who will pounce on her. She didn't have the physical strength, and the knowledge she had learned before the end of the world couldn't be used at all. Ji Chang's knew everything about her family background and the situation in her parents' home. The fact that he came out to find her and was willing to treat her the way he treated his wife is evidence in itself. The sharpness in Guo Junyuan's eyes gradually faded away. Seeing that Ji Chang's was still looking at her without blinking, as if waiting for her answer, she nodded sheepishly. I misunderstood you. I thought you didn't say anything because you wanted to agree to divorce. If she had known that this was a mistake and the other party didn't hear it at all, why would she run away from home and suffer such a crime? Guo Junyuan originally thought that Ji Chang's, who had been misunderstood and wronged by her, would be more or less emotional even if he was not angry. Unexpectedly, as soon as he heard her words, Ji Chang's relaxed obviously and a smile appeared on his face. It's okay, just make sure it's a misunderstanding. It's all Chen's fault. If he hadn't been talking nonsense, you wouldn't think I'm that kind of person. Guo Junyuan's guilt deepened even further. Chen's Lu had a criminal record before, so why did she still believe him? This person is too arrogant, he will do whatever it takes to go against Nagasawa. A sneeze. Chen Lu sat by the fire and sneezed heavily. He wiped his nose and said to the people around him with a bit of show-off, some girl must be thinking about me again. Hey, it's the end of the world. Even if they want, you probably won't have a chance to pursue me, it's just that my brother has no luck with these beautiful girls. The man, stop talking, you just have a cold. How could it be? I'm in very good health. Someone definitely misses me. Chen Lu was bragging nonsense, and when he glanced at them, he suddenly saw Ji Chang's and Guo Junyuan coming in arm, talking and laughing. Chen Lu. Wasn't Guo Junyuan still angry before? Was he coaxed so quickly by Ji Chang's, a humanoid liar machine? The Flash isn't even that fast. Deep down in his heart, he felt sorry for Guo Junyuan for being fooled again so easily, but at the same time he wished he could stretch his neck out like a giraffe and watch eagerly what was going on over there. That night, no matter what Chen Lu thought, Ji Chang's and Guo Junyuan maintained a peaceful and even mutually dependent situation. Chen Dai Lu. No way. It shouldn't be. Guo Junyuan is not stupid. Not only did Ji Chang submit the evidence before, he must also have exposed it at home. How could such a smart person as Guo Junyuan be deceived? He knew best how insidious Ji Chang's was. He will never forget his shock when he was in elementary school when he saw Ji Chang scattering melon seed peels on the clean floor of the next class in order to let his class get a mobile red flag. It's quite a feeling that I just thought you were annoying before, but I didn't expect you to be such a scheming dog. And since he went to college, Ji Chang's rank has been a lot higher. Later, when he started working, he met this guy a few times when he was out having fun and drinking. As a result, Guo Junyuan actually thought it was just a normal social interaction, which shows the rank of this guy. How high? Even Guo Junyuan, a top student, could be deceived into this. Gee, the scumbag is really scary. He felt that he still had the responsibility and obligation to help the lost sheep Guo Junyuan among his classmates. Of course, the most important thing is to expose Ji Chang's true face. Then he laughed at him wantonly. Early the next morning, when Guo Junyuan and Ji Chang's had agreed to go home together, while Ji Chang's was unprepared, Chen Lu quietly came to Guo Junyuan's side like a rat talking underground. Junyuan, have you reconciled with Ji Chang's? It's not me. It's not like you don't know what he did before. The irrefutable evidence can never be changed. Besides the physical evidence, there is also me as a personal witness. Don't believe his rhetoric, even if you are forced to do so due to the situation. When you're with him, you have to be careful, otherwise he might sell you out at some point. Guo Junyuan's dream last night was filled with guilt that she had misunderstood her husband. Now she heard Chen Lu's words again early in the morning, and her head was pounding. She rubbed her temples and tried to slow down her voice. Chen Lu, I thought carefully about why I filed for divorce from Nagasawa last night, and finally found the most important reason. Chen Lu thought she was about to step back from the cliff, and her expression immediately became excited. What is it? It's because of Ji Chang's ruthlessness and cold violence. Or is it because he spends a lot of time and shows mercy? Or because he spent all the family money? Whatever it is, Chen Lu is happy to see it come to fruition. After all, these reasons can help Guo Junyuan recall 100 reasons for breaking up with Ji Chang's. He still has a lot to add here, and the 180th reason for breaking up with Ji Chang's sounds very pleasing to the ear. While Chen Lu was happily thinking about various things, Guo Junyuan continued to speak. It's because of you. Chen Lu. He started to feel a little bad. Sure enough, Guo Junyuan said, I didn't doubt Nagasawa at first. It was you who sent me photos of him walking with other women. Later, it was you who kept telling me how he was living and drinking outside. After that, he became there is a bi clan, and you have been telling me that you and he grew up together and there is no way he can become a bi clan. Chen Lu, but these are all true. Chen Lu, but he really did it? I saw it with my own eyes. I saw it with both eyes. Guo Junyuan, okay, let's imagine that if you are Ji Chang's and you have done those things, cheated, and spent money for divorce, then now after the end of the world, you will come to me specifically and give all your do you want to share all your supplies with me. That certainly can't be the case. They all want a divorce, of course, they have to hide as far away as possible. As soon as this idea came out, Chen Lu's expression froze. No, no, how could he be taken there? He is the number one person in Kuraki Nagasawa. Junyuan, I really saw it. Although the photo was just of them walking together, what I saw with my two eyes was Ji Chang's hand on the girl's waist. You don't think I made it up to blackmail him? Right? Do you really think it's my fault? Guo Junyuan shook her head. How can this be your fault? Chen Lu breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, it was Ji Chang's who was wrong. He said that Guo Junyuan was a top student and had a smart mind, so she would definitely not be deceived by Ji Chang's. Guo Junyuan, it was me who was wrong. Chen Dailu. You and Nagasawa have always had a bad relationship. It's normal for you to look at him with colored glasses, but I'm different. I'm Nagasawa's wife. We've been in love for so long, and we have Xiaobeo. How can I be like you? Go blame Nagasawa. Chen Dailu. Actually, you are a very nice person. I accepted your favor for the gauze before, but I am already married. The person I like is Nagasawa. He and I have children. There is really no need for you to target Nagasawa like this. I made it so clear, I hope you won't do this kind of thing again next time. Chen's Lu, no, you misunderstood, I didn't target him because I like you, I really saw it, both eyes saw it, really. Guo Junyuan sighed, shook her head without saying anything, stood up and left with her child in her arms. You don't need to say it. I know everything. Anyway, I'm married and I only like Nagasawa. We have a baby. I hope you can look away and go out soon. I also hope you won't do this kind of thing again. And, I will never believe whatever you say in the future. Chen Dailu. Go out and be a ghost. He Temudi has already walked out, okay. Originally, he wanted to fight against Ji Chang's, and he wanted to pursue Guo Junyuan because of her good looks. Later, Guo Junyuan chose Ji Chang's, but he immediately replaced Guo Junyuan's good looks with bad eyes in his heart. Shortcoming. After all this time, who still cares about this? Could it be that in order to compete with Ji Chang's, there were roses and hearts all downstairs? Wherever you go, I will follow you wherever you go. Every time I meet someone, I will tell you that I like you. I want to confess to you. I know you like a star. I use the money from my part-time job to fly over and ask for an autograph. Is he just deeply in love with you? After reviewing, Chen Lu suddenly fell into deep thought. Looking back on it, it seems quite similar. Is he really still in love with Guo Junyuan? But why doesn't he know? Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 90. Guo Junyuan didn't leave anything here. They just picked up the bed and put it back in the car before leaving. Chen's Lu Ben was still angry because of Guo Junyuan's words. I thought, you are so easy to deceive, so you deserve to be deceived by this scumbag. But seeing them looking like they were about to leave, I also thought about what I wanted to do after working so hard to find food and drinks. He didn't know where Ji Chang's and the others were going, but he knew where he was going. Chen Lu ran out and drove a car from behind. Although this car is a bit damaged and a large piece of the outside body is dented, it doesn't matter, it is solid, can be driven, and most importantly, it doesn't use fuel. Chen Lu wants to go home. Although he acts like a stubborn maniac when it comes to Ji Chang's, in fact he is quite normal and is very filial to his parents. In this situation, it is difficult for him as a young man to live, and it is conceivable that his parents, who are already old, will definitely live an even more miserable life. Go home no matter what. Chen Lu searched hard these days to find these supplies and oil. He didn't leave before. On the one hand, he was worried that there was not enough supplies and wanted to find more. On the other hand, he always felt that Guo Junyuan was a woman here alone with a child. It seemed a bit unkind for him to leave directly. After all, she was also a classmate. Although Guo Junyuan's vision was not good, fortunately she stopped from the cliff and brought a baby with her. Besides, Guo Junyuan's house is not far from theirs, so he can definitely take her back with him. But if you really take them with you, first of all, you will definitely have responsibilities, and there is a baby. It would be okay if Guo Junyuan was an adult, but a child is not sensible. What if he was crying, and it was fine, but ended up attracting wild animals? There are not enough supplies. If we take them with us, we will definitely not be able to get enough food. I can't bring it with me, and I always feel uncomfortable if I don't bring it with me. Hesitant and entangled, Chen Lu just put it off until today while saving supplies. It's fine now, he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. Ji Chang's is here. Although he is still as annoying as ever and can pretend to be handsome, and his self-proclaimed handsome demeanor is still disgusting, but he brought Guo Junyuan with him. Suddenly, Guo Junyuan's invisible responsibility to Chen Lu was gone. Now that the responsibilities that were weighing on him were gone, of course he had to continue with his original plan and go home. Chen Lu got into the car, carefully took out the map he had found before, and studied the lines on it for a long time. In front, Guo Junyuan entered this RV for the first time. She knew what an RV looked like, but after getting there, she realized that for the current environment, an RV gave people too much sense of security. This RV is very tall, and the glass has not been modified except for the driver's seat, which requires a view, but other places have been modified. The outside seems to be made of simple iron railings, layer by layer, just like iron windows. The top layer was made into something like a shelf, with wooden sticks rolled in kerosene placed on it, which would be lit at night to drive away wild animals and plants. These things were all done by Li Hechuan. Although he is fat, his hands-on ability is really not weak. He sometimes let Fu Hao drive the car along the way, and he made things by himself, always working hard to show that he was still useful. Although the outside appearance looks a bit ugly due to the addition of these things, and the inside looks a bit crowded due to the placement of many things, there are beds in the RV. Guo Junyuan has not slept in a bed for 7 days. There are beds on the upper floors of the office building they are in, but they are nailed down and cannot be taken down. No one dares to sleep on them. After all, if something happens, there is really no chance to escape. Guo Junyuan herself was fine. Although she had a sore back and back from sleeping on the floor, she got used to it, but she was always worried that her child would not sleep well. As for the younger children, even though they worked hard to spread their clothes layer after layer on the ground, how could there be no cold when sleeping on the ground? Okay, now, this RV has a total of 3 queen beds. One is in the rear, one is a folding bed that can be used as a bed and table, and the other is the one on the driver's seat. Guo Junyuan carefully placed the baby, who was looking curiously from side to side with eyes like black grapes, on the bed at the back. She made a simple fence with pillows and stuffed headphones into his hands. Have time to see the environment inside the car. While she was looking at the environment inside the house, Ji Chang's was rummaging around in the off-road vehicle behind to find the milk powder that had been put there. From now on, Ji Chang's family would live in the RV, and Fu Hao's family and Li Hechuan's family would sleep in the off-road vehicle. Although it's a bit crowded, you can still make room by squeezing. In this world, Ji Chang's would not trust others 100%, but the children of Fu Hao's family could sleep in the RV. He was looking for milk powder when he heard Li Hechuan talking outside. I always feel like my parents are a little scared. Hey, even at this time, I still occasionally feel like I'm dreaming. How come it suddenly turns into a dream? That's it? Then came the voice of Fu Hao's wife, let's do this. I'll talk to your parents later and see if I can give them some psychological counseling. My senior sister, who was the best in the past, later studied psychology on her own. Although I didn't, but I also listened to her talk a lot, which can be of some help. Ji Chang's hand holding the milk powder paused. Psychology. He carried the milk powder and went to the RV. Seeing Guo Junyuan looking around, he naturally stepped forward and introduced what was in the car. This is a small pool. I have filled it with water. It is expected to last a few days. I also installed a water purification device for him. Don't be afraid if there is not enough water. This is an electric stove. The pots and pans are placed in the cabinet below. This rice cooker belongs to our family. I brought it to me. The rice and grains are piled in this cabinet. It was too full, so I picked it up. It's a bit laborious, so I'll get some out and put them on the table later. There is a secret door at the back, which opens into the shower room and toilet. It is also connected to water. You can choose hot or cold water. Because there are a lot of things, basically all the cabinets are full of stuff, so mattresses and pillows are all, there was no room for them, so I made all 3 beds, and also made several layers of the spare ones. Ji Chang said and knocked on the socket beside the bed again. These sockets can all be charged. I went out to find some discs this morning. There is also a small TV here, you can use it to watch discs, and there is a lot of music on the USB disc, which can also be used to listen to. This RV is simply an upgraded version of a small but fully functional car. Guo Junyuan felt relieved but a little complicated at the same time. She asked, "Did you buy this RV before?" Ji Chang shook his head. "How is that possible? This car looks very expensive at first glance. All the money I had at that time was used to prepare supplies. How can I still have money to buy this?" Guo Junyuan was reminded by him. She hesitated, but still asked, "Nagaze, did you know that this disaster was going to happen? Otherwise, why did you almost lose everything to buy these supplies?" Ji Chang's, "No, I have already calculated it all. I joined the Yubei clan before and found that everyone is very well prepared. Most of these things are second-hand, I bought from others, all in hard currency. No matter what, when I think of it, I can go out and maybe make a small profit. Moreover, I have already thought about it. With 3 months as the deadline, every time the 3 months is up, I will sell the supplies I have and start another one. Prepare new ones, you will never lose money." He stretched out his hand and held Guo Junyuan's hand. "Junyuan, I have always felt panic since I had the child. We have experienced earthquakes. Although we were young, you also know how terrible it was at that time. We have nothing to do, but since the baby was born, I have always been worried that some disaster will suddenly occur. If the adults can resist it, what will happen to the baby? No matter how hard I endure, I'll be fine, but Xiaobao can't." Guo Junyuan was still thinking about whether what Ji Chang said was correct, but when she heard the last sentence, she immediately felt the resonance. Yes, it doesn't matter how hard she endures, but Xiaobao can't. Xiaobao was still so young, a baby, he could only babbling, his body was small and fragile, and even the slightest mistake could make him sick. She just wanted to hold Xiaobao in the palm of her hand and carry her with her wherever she went. Every time during the past 7 days when she couldn't endure it anymore, Guo Junyuan would immediately cheer up when she thought about what kind of suffering Xiaobao would suffer if something happened to her or if she couldn't find food. "I thought you didn't care about Xiaobao. You haven't seen him much since he was born, and you didn't coax him. I really thought you didn't like him." Ji Chang's objected. "How could it be? He is my child. How could I not like him?" There was a trace of embarrassment on his face, as well as some embarrassment. Ever since my little baby was born, I have always been worried about what will happen to him and whether he will get sick. I dare not get close to him because I panic every time I see him. Actually, joining the Yubei tribe also has this factor. Prepare some more things. If there is any natural disaster, at least we will not let Xiaobao suffer. I just don't know why you misunderstood that I cheated. These things I am busy exercising and shopping every day, and I don't pay much attention to it. Junyuan, you and I have worked hard together. You know best what kind of person I am. How could I cheat? You must not misunderstanding, the only girl I have a close friendship with is the girl in the club, but she is not even 20 years old, and she has someone she likes. Even if I am a scumbag, I will not do such a thing, right?" Ji Chang's hid the fact that the original owner really had this idea deep in his head, and looked at Guo Junyuan cautiously with a hurt look on his face. When Guo Junyuan said this, she thought so. But she always felt like something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. When women have emotional problems, it is rare for them not to confide in them and ask their sisters for advice. Guo Junyuan decisively chose foreign help. She went to the off-road vehicle at the back and asked Fu Hao's wife to come out. Zhang Shengsheng listened to what she said, touched his chin and nodded. Your husband's situation has happened to new fathers. After my senior sister graduated, she studied psychology on her own and told me many cases. Your husband's situation is similar to one I've heard before. Guo Junyuan was hesitant and half-believing because she had never heard anyone say that such a situation would happen to a new father before. Now when she heard these words, she immediately became energetic and hurriedly asked her to tell her. After giving birth to a child, many mothers will be depressed, but if the father of the child is full or even exceeds the standard of love for the child, some symptoms will also appear. The case I heard is that the father of the child was too much after the child was born. If you love your child, you will have nightmares all night long, dreaming that the child is crying, or that the child is in danger, and you may even have auditory hallucinations during the day. Do you know that in the animal world, mothers give birth to cubs? To protect them, most of the fathers just do nothing and be a hands-off shopkeeper, but there are also some animals where the parents take care of the children together, or the father takes care of the children. They will isolate themselves from all dangers that may threaten the children, and they will always be vigilant. Natural enemies until the child grows up. Of course, the above are all my own guesses. My senior sister didn't tell me too much. Anyway, in most cases, this situation will happen to my mother, but the situation that happened to my father is not unheard of. This is probably the case for your husband. Because he loves his children too much, it creates a psychological burden and starts to cause unnecessary worries. You also said before that he joined the Yubei clan and bought so many devices because he was worried about his children and future dangers. Right? Isn't this the same as when a mother in the animal world prepares enough food for her baby? I think your husband is in the same situation. She made a vague guess and asked according to her own idea of solving the problem, how is it? Is your husband quite normal now? I saw that he didn't hide from the baby before. Instead, he was very attentive to playing with the baby and coaxing him. The baby looks very patient while sleeping. Guo Junyuan nodded, yes, he is very good to the baby now. He is not hiding away like before. That's right. In fact, Zhang Shengsheng, who knew little about psychology, felt that his idea of solving the problem was indeed correct. She analyzed it for Guo Junyuan. Look, when everything was safe before, your man was worried about a disaster in the future, so he worked hard to stock up on goods, was busy improving himself, and learning various skills, so he had no time to take care of the family, and because when I see the baby, I feel scared and dare not approach the baby, right? Right. Guo Junyuan nodded and asked doubtfully, but he is not like that at all now. That may be because his worries have come true. The supplies he prepared can be used, and his own physical fitness can also be used in such an environment. He found the RV and made full preparations for the supplies. He can take good care of the baby and you. At this time, the pressure is no longer to worry about what may happen in the future, but what has already happened. These things are not as uncertain as before. He fully knows what he wants to do. What to do, for example, I found you and Xiaobao before, and now I am taking you back to your hometown. After you have something to do, those anxious emotions will of course ease or disappear. So that's it? Guo Junyuan suddenly realized that everything became clear. Ji Chang's didn't live at home before because he was busy being a wealthy family member and training himself. He is cold towards the baby because he is too anxious to face the baby. His behavior, which almost seemed like he wanted to wipe out the entire family's funds, also stemmed from his anxiety. You're so awesome, you actually hit them all. I don't really know much about psychology / I just listened to my seniors talk a few times / I completely relied on my own blind voice with a smile on my face that said I'm very proud but I have to show humility, no so awesome, actually this is easy to guess, very easy to guess. Chen Lu was driving his car and found that the road was blocked in front of him. He got out of the car unhappily and planned to rush ahead. Don't stop him from getting home. As soon as the result passed, I watched Guo Junyuan holding Zhang Shenzhen's hand, sighing with emotion on her face. It turns out that Nagasawa often doesn't go home, and he hasn't held the baby much since he was born, and he still took all the money at home to go there. He bought those yubei supplies because he loves babies so much. I misunderstood him for so long. I really shouldn't have. Chen Dailu. He almost wondered if there was something wrong with his ears. It's over, it's over. Let's just say Ji Chang's is a harmful person. Look, Guo Junyuan's vision is not only bad now, she even has trouble using her brain.